Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. To my right, Shadow the Night Owl. He is my buddy and the spirit animal of the show here. Any support helps me pay for Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free Hootie Snacks, and we put it in the H&S 500, the Hootie Snack 500, of course. Tonight, we're going to be going over an interesting perspective from Jon Benet Ramsey's father. Brian Entin interviewed him, and he gives the perspective of someone that has just tragically lost a loved one, but is simultaneously considered a suspect by many of the police and the DA in the area. And this is something we've gone over before, where it's a double whammy, where you lose a loved one, especially if it's your spouse, and then you're also considered the first suspect for a while. So that's really got to suck. Of course, especially if you're innocent, right? So, and I think most people think her father's innocent, and it seems like to me he is. So I think, and admittedly, I don't know that much about the case, but he shares his perspective from being basically considered a suspect when he wasn't. So he talks about that angle of it, and he talks about his advice to the Guthrie family. And this also goes for Annie and Tommaso as well, right? I know a lot of people seem very sure they must have been involved somehow. I'm not so sure about that. All I would ever say is I don't think they should be cleared. I don't think they should be accused or condemned, but I also don't think they should be completely cleared either. Sikorsky, how are you? And Yokin, how are you? D, what's shaking? Shadow when I say hello. I got off work at 11, and holy crap, it's not 11 here. What time zone are you in? Oh, you get off work at 11. Okay. So again, today we're going to go over the couple Brian Entin videos and the Tony Brueski video. As you wander in here, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Smack that like button, spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here. And everyone who's a member of the flock of black sheep, tell a friend or five about Black Sheep Nation here. And speaking of Black Sheep Nation, I'm going to have 3 sets of t-shirts I'll be putting on the YouTube store, which is really a Spotify store. So the first one's going to be men's Revenge of the Black Sheep with the claw marks. You can get those in men or women. Black Sheep Nation with a little black sheep. That's going to be more of a bigger logo, but that can be in men's or women's. Laura helped me out with that design. And there's going to be tank tops as well, which could be either one, Revenge of the Black Sheep or Black Sheep Nation. So keep your eyes open for that. Linda, welcome. D says, my one dog's blood test came back really bad. Maybe her liver or gallbladder. An ultrasound on Friday, but I'm sad. Oh, well, Shadow and I send some good vibes because I know that's a rough time. And you never know, you don't want to worry yourself into a tiffy, but at the same point, you never know what it could be. So better to be safe than sorry. Animals are a part of the family. I understand that. Shadow understands that. So everyone's going to send you some good vibes. Molly, welcome. This is my first time watching. My name is Molly. Well, good golly, Miss Molly, we have an awesome flock of black sheep here. We consider ourselves the Black Sheep Nation. Many of us are night owls. Many of us are also a school of Pisces fish, as I like to say. The reason why a lot of people are night owls, especially if they had toxic parents, is because during the day, they weren't able to be themselves. They were constantly criticized, belittled. It wasn't safe to be them. Whenever they spoke up, they'd get punished. But there was one time of day that wasn't the case, and that was at nighttime, or maybe very early in the morning before people got up. But often it was nighttime when everyone else went to bed. Then people's nervous system could relax. But Molly, Shadow, and I are very glad you found us. Welcome to the channel. As the rest of the flock of black sheep come in here, they will welcome you as well. D says, is the one I crossed the border to get in Indiana? Okay. Fingers crossed, D. Shadow has his feathers crossed right now. Hello there, Sikorsky. All right, so let's jump into this. And this is Jon Benet Ramsey's father, Jon Ramsey. And he has an interesting perspective. Risk, how are you? He's had insomnia since I was little. I don't know if I would consider what I have insomnia, or I'm just more of a night owl that can't sleep before 2 a.m. In fact, I never do. I mean, I don't even fall asleep till after 3 a.m. anymore, if not 4. So it's just gotten worse and worse. But I also need my sleep. And maybe that's the difference between an insomniac and me. They can just get up at a regular time. I cannot. I would not be able to do that. TJ, welcome. Danielle, welcome. Danielle says, hi, Jared. Hi, everybody. I remember when that happened to Jon Benet. I lived 2 blocks away when it happened, and it was so scary. Because how old was she when that happened? 6, 5, 6, 7? Something around there, right? So we got Shadow says hello, Danielle. And hello there to Rooster as well. Let's see. Mel Brooks is the same way with his sleep too. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I thought so. Still a tragedy, right, Danielle? Scary. Especially when it happens so close to home. Jeanine says, Jared's on. That means it's time for a snack. I think I'll do string cheese tonight. How about that? Shadow and I approve. That could be risk. Like I said, I have not looked too far into that case, so I would have to do some digging to tell you what I really think. But all right, let's jump into this video here. Brian Entin.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. Really appreciate all the support. I was thinking about this when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie case, and you think about Nancy's family and her children and what they're going through right now and what they've been through with this whole thing. There's really only so many people who can understand that. There's not that many other cases that have been that high profile, that have had that much attention, that have had situations where family members have been sort of dragged through the mud. And one of those cases would be the Jon Benet Ramsey case, which is just awful. Jon Benet Ramsey found dead, murdered in 1996, still unsolved. But I had a conversation.
So 1996, still unsolved. So I was a little bit older than her.
With her dad, Jon Ramsey, about the situation that Nancy Guthrie's family is in, because he can understand it in a way that almost no one else can. First of all, a lot of people thought that he was involved in his daughter's death, and he had to fight those accusations for years. And in this episode, he's going to talk about what that felt like in the moment, but also in his dealings with police. And he says that he has advice for the Guthrie family with everything they're going through based on his own experience with what he went through involving his daughter's investigation and the way the police handled it. So I want you to hear my full conversation with Jon Ramsey. I thought it was really interesting. I've obviously seen Jon Ramsey on TV a ton. I've seen him in documentaries, but I never really seen him just be able to speak.
Look at Brian Entin here. He's wandering through the Florida nightlife. Is that what he's doing right now? I guess so, right?
His mind, not sort of in like TV sound bites. So I found it to be a really, really interesting conversation, and I wanted to share it with you guys.
Jon, I really appreciate you for taking the time to talk with me. Thank you very much. I was watching some of your interviews that you did about the Guthrie case, and most of them were from, it's been 100 days now plus. Most of them were from the first couple of weeks.
Right.
And you were sort of giving advice about, what it's like to be in that situation with the Guthrie families. And I'm just curious, now that it's been more than 3 months, what are your thoughts about the case?
Well, initially what I was paying attention to was what the police were doing and not doing, having learned a lot about what should be done. in a serious case like that. And of course, it's hard to tell because you're getting little snippets of news here and there, and you're not sure what's accurate. But it appears there was a level of territorialism involved, and that's a huge problem in our country, in my opinion, the way we're structured. And that was a big problem in our case. The police didn't see.
And that's correct. Brian Entin is in New York because he's covering for Chris Cuomo. So thanks for the chat for pointing that out.
Help from people that knew what they were doing. And help was offered. But we have 18,000 police jurisdictions in this country. The smallest one I'm aware of is a little town of 650 people in Ohio, has a part-time police chief and a part-time detective. That's the police department, but they're in charge. And there was a murder in that little town, and the police wouldn't ask for help at the insistence of the relatives. And the relatives took it to the legislature and said, this is crazy that they have absolute authority, as all of these 18,000 jurisdictions have, on cases they have no experience or talent or resources to deal with. And yet the ego comes in and, yeah, we can solve this. We call it the Barney Fife syndrome, if you remember. I don't know.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Barney was, in his mind, God's gift to law enforcement, and a skinny Wyatt Earp. He was going to get the bad guy. And Andy, a sheriff, wouldn't give him bullets for his gun because he's afraid to shoot somebody.
And he's going to mention this later, but he lost 2 children. His older daughter was killed in a car accident. So he lost 2 daughters. I mean, that's got to be horrific.
But it's an ego thing, and I saw some of that, I think, based on the news reports and what was going on in the Guthrie case. Serious crimes, we need to respond maximum force and resources. And I'm not sure that happened in that case. And, the first couple of days are so critical to resolving a serious crime. DNA, in our case, the forensic people spent 2 hours in our house and said, "We're done." And the DA said, "You can't be done in 2 hours. Get back in there, collect DNA evidence, collect evidence." I was told by sophisticated people that do this a lot, forensics, crime scene forensics, they said in a serious crime, we'll spend 3 days on site minimum looking for evidence, DNA evidence. And I think in the Guthrie case.
So a big case, 3 days minimum, when in this case, they had the crime scene opened up the next day. I think it was Monday when they had it opened. So to me, he's basically speaking to that right now. Massive blunder, opening up that soon. Wait for the FBI. Send the doormat to the FBI lab or the private lab, wherever. It doesn't even matter where. Just send it somewhere so you can get all the DNA you can from it. Analyze the crime scene. But as we know, not what happened. But let's see what he says.
They maybe spent a day and then they turned the house loose, and FBI came and said, whoa, not so fast. Can't be done yet, guys. And they said, no DNA found. Well, there's DNA all over the place. And with today's technology, you can find DNA. May not be what you're looking for, but so.
Yeah, that was one of the strange things with the Guthrie case is, it seemed like there was a little bit of a battle between the sheriff and the FBI, and the sheriff kind of wanting to handle it himself, but my thing is, why not let the FBI come in? They have hundreds of people. Exactly. The sheriff would still end up looking good. I mean, if they solved it, regular Americans don't know the difference. They'd just be like, oh, the sheriff did a good job, or the FBI did a,
He brought in resources. He managed the case. He wasn't trying to be Wyatt Earp and be the hero that rides in on a horse and solves the case. And that's so common, I'm afraid, in our system, the way it's structured. Each of these little jurisdictions have absolute authority for what goes on in their jurisdictions, with the exception of kidnapping, in which case the FBI has the authority to come right in, I believe, and bank robbery.
Mm.
The FBI can come in immediately, take the case over. What the FBI did, they said, well, we're letting the sheriff run the case and we're available to help any way he wants. Nonsense. And the sheriff should have recognized that he needed all the resources he get hands on and said, come on in. But he didn't. And it's sad, but that happens a lot in our country, though, because of the way we're structured.
Hey guys, I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's episode, Incogni, identity theft. It is such a big issue. I am always so paranoid every time I get a credit alert. I've had several family members and friends have their identities stolen, and it is just the worst. Criminals can get personal information. They use it for scams, stalking, harassment.
So that's what it means? QQQ only means question, question, question? It seems like a silly thing, but I've been seeing it in terms of investments too, I think. I don't know. I can be behind the times on some things.
If they can't find you, click the link below to claim your 60% off and get your personal data off the market.
What was it like, again, now that we're, it's been 3 months since Nancy went missing, and I'm just thinking of you and what you went through with Jon Benet. How do your emotions change over that time? I mean, is it...
Okay, so I was seeing that on Reddit as well. People were saying QQQ. And I kind of thought it was like, is this a company or something? Because people were talking about it in terms of investments. But now, okay, if it's just a question, I get it now. Shadow and I get it. Shadow and I are behind the times, like I said, on some things.
Is it true, like the different phases? Like, is it shock and then some? Like, do you remember the 3-month period, what that sort of felt like?
Well, for me, not knowing was 6 hours, and that's horrible. My child is out there. It's dark. It's cold. There's snow on the ground, and some creature's got her, and this angst of not knowing. And quite frankly, when I found her, at first I thought I'd found her. I thought she was alive and just sleeping, perhaps. And there's this huge rush of relief. Thank God I found her. And then I realized that she was gone. And you move in. Now it's like, okay, well, that's the worst thing you can imagine, but it's a, I won't say it's a solution. It resolves that horrible angst and imagination of what could be happening to my child. I knew Jon Benet now was in heaven, and that, as much as I wish he wasn't at the moment, that I could deal with that. So as time went on, we were told by an inside source, we don't know who it was, but it came through a friend that relayed this message to us. They said, tell Jon, this is like on the day after Jon Benet was found, tell Jon to get the best defense attorney to get his hands on because they think he killed his daughter. And it didn't matter what they thought. It was like I'd lost my child. That nothing more could hurt me any deeper than that. So we knew the police thought that, and it's like, well, okay, whatever. That was the least important thing in our grief, and so as time went on, it became very obvious that they were very focused on Patsy and I, and they weren't sure which one. And we were told by the DA years later that they decided it was a family member because we didn't act right, and it's always the family.
And yes, as I'm reading Matt Murphy's The Book of Murder, that is absolutely what they look at. They look at your reactions under questioning. They think, okay, what should your emotions have been like? If you were genuinely grief-stricken, how would you act? And they look into that kind of thing. So he's saying here, basically, the police and detectives were thinking, yeah, him and his wife, they weren't acting right. They weren't acting the way that we thought grieving parents should act. Which again, they would say everyone can grieve a little bit differently, but I guess it's easier to point out how someone maybe wouldn't be grieving. I don't know. But like I said before, it still sucks. If you're innocent, it absolutely sucks to have the finger pointed at you, especially after such a tragedy, right? But also, while you're here, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Throw Shadow a like vest the same way Brian Hooker should have to Lynette Hooker, but did not. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat, Black Sheep Nation. Also, as more people are in, there's a new person named Molly that people should be welcoming. So welcome Molly to the chat here. And super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships. Great ways to support the channel. Helps me pay for Shadow the Night Owl here's soy-free hoodie snacks. We also put some in the H&S 500, the hoodie snack 500. And when you're a member, you get access to the members-only live streams. So the next one's going to be tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. We do a Q&A and a chill-and-A in there. And as always, thank you very much for all of the support I've been getting so far. I've been seeing Sweet Caroline again, doing a fair amount of super thanks in the comment section. So Shadow and I wanted to give Sweet Caroline a shout out. Hopefully she pops into this one too.
And but they didn't know which one, so let's just put pressure on both of them. The innocent one would turn the guilty one in, case solved. That was the whole strategy. This came from the DA several years later. And so they released a lot of misleading information, false information to the media. And the media ran with it, probably way beyond what they expected. And Gallup did a poll. Why, I don't know. They did a poll, I don't know, months later. 70% of those polled felt that the family was guilty. And of course they did, because that's what they were told. And of course the tabloids ran with it very sensationally, including accusing my 9-year-old little boy of being the murderer, and just crazy stuff. And but the police were feeding it a bit, and they certainly weren't looking for the killer. They were trying to figure out how to prosecute and get enough put together to force the DA to arrest either Patsy or both, I guess. And the big problem they had in our case was they found unidentified male DNA a couple weeks later. And that was a problem for the police because that conflicted big time with their conclusion, what they wanted to conclude and did conclude. So it was just a mess. But the real fundamental tragedy in our case, and it seems to be to some degree in the Guthrie case, there's lots of help offered, qualified help. In our case, it was all refused. Denver police offered 3 homicide detectives, experienced. Boulder had no homicide detective. The guys working on our case were auto theft investigator and a drug, whatever you call him, drug guy.
Yeah.
Bad guy selling drugs. They didn't know anything about homicides. If that they were in charge. And I got a feeling that may have been the case in the Guthrie case too, where it appears, I don't know, but I don't know that they had a homicide detective or anybody experienced in homicides. And that's a big deal. It's homicide.
Yeah, they were inexperienced, by the way. Not to interrupt you, but they all had less than 2 years for the most part. The folks who came in right away. And
a good detective, that comes from years of experience, and you just don't take a guy out of a squad car and say, "Okay, now you're a detective." The detectives are good detectives. I've learned that are a unique breed, and just because you say you're a detective doesn't mean you have the discipline to follow the evidence, and that's That's what was lacking in our case, big time.
And the other question I had was for user that she said, is the family cleared? And I wanted to know, in this case, the Jon Benet case or Nancy Guthrie case? Because, I mean, he's clearly not charged, right? So I'm not sure of the ins and outs of the Jon Benet case. So I'm not the right person to ask. Mayor might be a better person to ask.
But most important, they refused help. And it appears some of that was going on in the Guthrie case too, where they wouldn't give the FBI access to the evidence. Don't know if that's true, but that's what was reported. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
What was it like when you're, grieving your daughter, and then wanting to figure out what happened, obviously wanting some justice, and then I guess you said you got a story and you knew that they thought you or someone in your family did it. So were you still communicating with the police, or were you sort of nervous to talk to them? Or
well, no, we
Oh, this is big, Mayor. I'm going to put this on the screen, even though it's not a super chat. They found undigested pineapple in her duodenum. How do you pronounce that? Duodenum? Which means JBR had pineapple right before she died, several hours at most, which contradicts the Ramsey timeline. What is the Ramsey timeline to compare and contrast?
wanted to. Certainly they've got enough common sense to, see that we're not child murderers. There's no history in our family of problems. We don't have any problem talking to them, but our attorneys, being defense attorneys, they take the position that to the police, if you think our clients are guilty, prove it. We're not going to talk to you. And so they sat us down with a group of experienced.
So family's timeline is Jon Benet went to bed at 10. Okay.
People. I remember one retired homicide detective out of Southern California was in this group, and we came back to Boulder to work with the police. And he said there are more innocent people in prison today for one reason, and that reason is that their attorneys let them talk to the police. And it's like, wow. Well, they also told us, which we didn't know this, but Jon Benet was buried in Atlanta, which was our home. We lived in Atlanta for a long time, and we had a cemetery plot there where my oldest daughter was buried. Was killed in a car accident a couple of years before. And so we knew where Jon Benet would be buried, and we made arrangements to get her back there and have a ceremony. And we were told this later. We didn't know this at the time. The police refused to release her body until you consent to come in for an interview.
So, Mayor, the question then would be, what do you think? So the chat, this is not what I don't know anything about it, but someone in the chat said they think it was her mother. And so I would ask, okay, what is the motive for her mother to do it? What do you think the motive was?
And we'd already interviewed with them for hours, but we were staying at a friend's home, and they came to us and said, "Hey, we want you to come down to the station." Well, our friend's house is surrounded by media cameras, and Patsy's, comatose almost. I said, "We can't come to the station. You come here. We'll talk to you all you want, but we're not gonna get dressed and come to the station." Oh, I said, why do you want us to come to the station? Well, we have papers there. So we'll bring the papers here. And a good friend of mine who had worked in the DA's office and was an attorney stepped in and said, "John, would you allow me to do some things here that I think are necessary?" And I said, "Yeah." He told the police, "We're not going to the station. We'll get back to you." And that's when the conflict started.
Mm-hmm.
And we were shocked that they refused to release her body. Now my friend, the attorney, screamed bloody murder at the DA and said that's absurd, and the DA overrode that decision. But the police were being jerks, basically, And but we still thought, well, they're not idiots. They've got some level of common sense, but we really had no problem talking to them. We did for 2 or 3 hours that day and the day after, but we thought, well, we better listen to our attorneys, and
So Jeanine says Patsy was living through Jon Benet and she was jealous. Patsy also did pageants. Well, this is the hypothetical because I know nothing about Patsy, but I do know narcissistic mothers certainly envy their daughters. And they're the kinds of mothers that would try to live through their daughters. So whether it's sports, music, beauty pageants, they get a version of supply from having their daughter, in this case, live the way they wanted to live, right? So it's kind of their narcissistic fantasy. Okay, I want Jon Benet to grow up in my footsteps, and they basically control the kid. But if she got envious, who knows? Who knows what could have happened with that? Who knows? But it's certainly a possibility, right?
Of course, if you hire an attorney, you're immediately tagged as, well, you must be guilty then. And that's not true. Sometimes it is, but and we didn't hire him. My friend brought him in. The next day he introduced me to my attorneys, and I'd had that.
And Mayor, this is your time to shine, Mayor. Shadow says, Mayor's got the floor. This is her time to shine. She's been doing her homework for this moment. So let's hear it.
Message in the back of my head. I didn't tell anybody that I'd gotten that warning that they were out to get me. So that, well, okay, I guess we need attorneys. And if you hire an attorney, you better pay attention to them. And so we didn't have, for good reason, a relationship with the police after that period. And
that's generally rare. If the family's innocent, generally speaking, they have a good relationship with the police and the detectives and the DA and the prosecutor because they want it solved. So it seems kind of rare that they would not have a good relationship with the police and be innocent, right? Again, just from what I've read about these cases, generally, if they're innocent, they might be upset it's not solved, but at the same time, I wouldn't say there's outright animosity a lot of times. But again, each situation can be a little bit different. Maybe there's other reasons for animosity. Maybe they think the police screwed it up, and that could be a reason why they're mad. Yeah, that all could be. I mean, would we be surprised right now if in the Nancy Guthrie case, Savannah Guthrie's mad at the police? I mean, would that surprise anybody? Wouldn't surprise me.
The other element was our attorneys introduced themselves to the police, and then we now represent Jon and Patsy, and we'd like transcripts of the earlier interviews they did, which is very standard practice. The police wouldn't give them to them. And it's like, okay, there's not going to be any more interviews till we get the transcripts of the hours of interviews I've already done with them. They wouldn't do it. So it was just a mess. But the big mess was they refused help from people that knew what they were doing. They didn't know what they're doing. And I'm afraid there was some of that going on in the Guthrie case.
Yeah, and they've, very different than your case. The sheriff came out and said that, no one in the family is a suspect. And I have a source who says that there were polygraphs done, and, they've cleared them essentially. Although some people say you can't really clear anyone until you have someone else, but the sheriff has said that they're cleared. But despite that,
we've taken a polygraph test.
You did too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I can tell you how Matt Murphy, the former DA in Orange County, would think. He would say, if a family is refusing to talk to us for 4 months, I'm pretty sure he would think there's something suspicious about that. Mayor, what do you think? I think you would think that too, right? That if you're refusing to talk to them, there's something a little bit suspicious going on. Maybe.
Just determined to be truthful.
And they still didn't back off.
Mm-mm. Well, this is like a year later.
Yeah.
I'd done an interview, or 2 years later, maybe. Our attorneys wouldn't even let us talk to the media, and they wouldn't talk to the media. They said, we don't practice law in front of a TV camera. We practice in front of a judge.
Do you think that was a mistake looking back now? I mean,
They said it was a real dilemma because you were being prosecuted in the court of public opinion, and we don't know how to deal with that. There's no evidentiary rules or procedural rules. And they said, we're not trained to do that. In front of a judge, that's what we're trained to do, and we can do our job. But in front of a camera, in front of a, thing like that, I said it was a real problem for us because we knew you're getting prosecuted, but we don't have the skills, and it's a Wild West crazy environment.
Mm.
So that's a good point by Tina, though, too. I mean, if the cops are harassing them and acting like they're guilty when they're not, and you are truly innocent, yeah, I could see that. I'd be annoyed by that, too. All right, if I'm being treated like I'm guilty, or at the very least a suspect, and I'm not, and they refuse to see me in any other way, yeah, I wouldn't really like that either. So, again, I can see it from both sides.
I said, we will defend you in court, and we will promise you one thing. We'll destroy them if they think you killed your daughter and indict you for that. Don't worry about that. In court, there's so much evidence contrary to what their solution or their conclusion was. Don't even worry about that. You shouldn't have to go through it, but
did it hurt though that so many, and I'm asking you this because obviously with the Guthries, despite them clearing the family, and I've been covering the case since the beginning, there's no evidence that anyone in the family is involved. And despite that, though, there's still this group of people that continues to point fingers online and just doesn't let it go.
Yeah.
I mean, does that, when you went through that, did that hurt very badly? Or is it like you said, you're almost numb from losing your daughter, that like nothing?
Yeah, it didn't hurt. I mean, it looking back on it now, you think, man, that was nuts. But no, it didn't matter. I mean, we knew who we were. Our friends supported us strongly. We'd lost her child. You couldn't hurt her. And Patsy said, you can't hurt me any more than you've hurt me. So it doesn't matter. I've told people, look, if you're out for a walk in the woods one day and you come across a body and you call the police, guess who the number one suspect is? You, initially. Well, what were you doing in the woods? Why were you there at that time? How'd you happen to go by that spot? It was kind of remote. And then they'll move on to the next periphery.
Yeah.
But there and you call, you're the suspect. That's just a fact. And so we sort of understood that we needed to be investigated as family members.
Mm.
We understood that. But to have reached that conclusion on day one before any evidence was recovered was immature detective work.
And that was before social media too. I mean, I just think about it now. Now you've got like armies of people coming after you. Granted, you also have people who support you, and you see them too, which you didn't really get to see, I guess.
Well, we didn't certainly. Well, we didn't pay attention to the media at all because we didn't. It was not relevant. We were deeply wounded by the loss of our child, and in fact, we took television out of our house.
That is interesting there. Because again, I guess the question would be, what came first? Were the police harassing them? Because Mayor says they weren't harassed, right? So if they weren't harassed and they were just trying to get them to come down for questioning and they refused, That's a little bit peculiar. But again, Mary knows a lot more about this case than me, so I'm deferring a little bit to her.
Just wouldn't even bring it into the house. Unfortunately, our friend would say, "You can't believe what they said last night."
Right.
Don't tell us. We don't want to know. But you know, I never could understand. It didn't make sense to why the police had no common sense at all. And you know, 68% of the time, sadly, it's a caregiver when the child.
And again, that's another good point Mary made, though, too, is that when you're innocent, don't you think you'd be speaking more about how terrible what happened to your daughter was and the terrible things that was and how justice is needed, or convincing people of your own innocence? Interesting thoughts, right? Good questions are very powerful.
I was murdered at home. I did research that. But in almost, if not all, most all of those cases, there's a long history of problems in that family. The police have been called to the house. The neighbors know there's a problem. The schools know there's a problem. If that doesn't exist, parents just don't wake up one day and decide to kill their child.
Yeah.
You know, you got to cut it one more. Yeah, you're in the house, you're the parents. What else would support such a bizarre behavior? And if it wasn't there, then you better move on. Well, they didn't move on.
It's strange how much, I mean, technology has come so far since your case, since Jon Benet was murdered.
Yeah.
You think about DNA, and in the Guthrie case, they've got the photos from the doorbell camera.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's unsolved, and that not only unsolved, but there really, I don't think, is a lot of progress even.
Doesn't appear to be. No. It's a very strange crime. I was, again, reading in the newspaper, whether it was accurate or not, I don't know, but the police just originally thought, well, she probably just wandered off, being an 84-year-old person. Well, I'm 83. I don't wander off in the middle of the night.
Right.
So if there's no history, that's probably not what happened. If there's blood on just poor detective work, frankly. You know, the one of my consolation.
So he was a bit of an older father to Jon Benet. So he said he's 83. In 1990, that would make him 47 years old. And in 96, he was 53. 53 years old and having a 6-year-old. Not impossible, for sure, right? Certainly, even look at Mick Jagger and Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. All his age now, basically, and giving birth to kids.
Their understandings, I guess, was, the Bible book of Proverbs talks about fools.
And of course, not him. The women giving birth to kids, of course. Hello there, Tim. Welcome.
And so there are fools in the world. Keep them out of your life. Don't try to reason with them. Don't try to argue with them. Just keep them away from you. Keep them out of your life. And all these people are fools. I'm not going to be able to reason with them. And just accept that.
What is it like?
Shadow told me, you know what they say about fools? When you argue with a fool, then there are two.
I mean, you mentioned you said you're 83, right?
Almost.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. Okay, 82. I mean, I've seen you speak before. You've become an advocate for other families going through awful things. What is it like all these years later? I mean, it must still be painful because you put on this, you have such strength when you speak, you know what I mean? And
well, I know Jon Benet's in heaven. When my first daughter was killed in a car accident, a total accident, it really took me to my faith to its knees. And I thought, there is no God. How could a loving God let this happen to a wonderful child that's just starting out on her life, basically? And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. People came alongside and helped me with that process. And it gave me almost a foundation, a faith foundation, that I could then handle Jon Benet's murder. Much more, Beth, my oldest daughter, it was an accident. Life's risky. Accidents happen. In Jon Benet's case, it was a willful act of another human being. That's a more difficult thing to get your head around. This is a demonic monster that would take a 6-year-old child from her bed on Christmas night, sexually abuse her, torture her, and kill her. It's nothing short of demonic. And that's what's hard to get your head around, that there are people. I saw somebody said, we really all live in a pretty bad neighborhood. It's called Earth. And don't be naive just because you live in a gated community we thought Boulder was a la land, flowers coming up and nice community. It's a beautiful community, but there are a lot of weirdos in that town, as there are in every town.
Yeah, I remember the last big moment where I thought, gosh, maybe, there's going to be some kind of resolution with Jon Benet's case was when the new chief came in and said that they had some new leads and there were things they were looking into. And it felt very promising or hopeful.
Well, yeah. And that had to happen before anything happened, because their lead, I've always faulted their leadership 100%. You get young guys eager to solve the world's problems, and if they don't have a good leader, they're going to go haywire, as the 2 detectives that worked on our case for years did. They had very poor leadership. And when they brought in a new chief, they terminated they retired him, let's put it that way. The detective that had our case for 25 years, that was a huge step forward. They brought the new chief in from outside that culture, had a lot of experience. The detective that was in charge of our case is gone. That had to happen. So it was like, okay, now we maybe can make some progress. And but until that happened, nothing was going to happen.
I wonder if there's any cold case detectives that try to open this up and take a look at it. Probably. That's almost like a hobby to some prosecutors, is taking a look at old cases and detectives and doing the work and trying to bring someone to justice. And I wonder if they really just think it was the mother and she's passed away. Then what are they going to do? Nothing. Nothing's the answer.
Is there still progress? Do you think there's still progress happening?
We met with the new chief. I probably met with him, 4 times over the last year and a half, 2 years that he's been in office. And I respect him. He's a competent leader, as far as I can tell, and has good experience. And but he won't tell me anything. And I sort of get that. Lou Smith, who was that legendary detective that was brought in by the DA in Boulder to work on our case, and within a month or 2 said, no, the parents were involved with this. It's clearly an intruder, and there's lots of evidence for it. Lou wouldn't talk to the media. He said, that's not my job. My job is to find Jon Benet's killer. And he finally did agree to an interview a couple years later, just because it was so biased and crazy, the stuff that was out there, and he knew it was not right. So he did talk to the media, but he didn't plan on that, and he didn't like to do it. So a good police department keeps their mouth shut. They ought to tell the parents something. But we did, the last meeting we had with the chief of police, he said, I'm more optimistic now than I've ever been that we'll get a solution. And so that's the best encouragement we've had. You know, what we've been pushing hard for, DNA is, 30 years ago, it was kind of a new thing, and FBI had this database CODA set up where if you had a bad guy, he put his DNA in CODIS, and then if you had another crime, you'd look in the bad guy file to see if there's any match. Well, that was all we had 30 years ago. Now, with investigative genetic genealogy, IgG, it's like a nuclear weapon for crime solving. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so even press the police use IgG, please. I think the 7% chance that'll solve the case. But they've got to do it. I hope they're doing it, but we don't know.
I hate to use the word club, it's a weird word, but you're kind of in this weird club of like people. There's sadly, a lot of murders that get a lot of coverage, but there's only a handful that had the kind of exposure yours did.
Right.
And I think that Guthrie sort of falls into that category too, where it's just the whole country knows about your case. I mean, every single person, regardless of where they live, has heard about it, is following it.
Yeah.
Very similar to what you went through. And again, I can't think of that many. There's a lot that are people talk about or you hear about here and there, but there's only a few where it's in the full-on mainstream.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, what would you say to the Guthries? I mean, they're obviously in the thick of it now, and you understand in a way that most people don't.
Yeah. Well, I think don't assume the police are doing everything they can do. They may be, but don't assume that. Don't assume they know what they're doing. They may, but don't assume that.
So what do you think about that advice? Don't assume the police know what they're doing. They might, but not always. And don't assume that, I guess, they're competent is what that means. But what do you think about that advice, chat? Do you agree? Don't assume? And that leads to the follow-up question. Okay, don't assume they're doing it right, which means what? Stay on them, which means be ready to call them out. What's the next step? That's what I would be curious about.
And really scrutinize what they're doing. Ask questions. DNA, what's the status of the DNA? Do you have DNA that doesn't match anybody in the family? What are you doing with it? Just putting it in CODIS, that's obsolete. That's not going to result. That worked for 30 years ago. That's all we had. But now you can employ IgG and create a family tree, and with pretty good probability, get a name on the killer. And so just really, you got to, it's like they say, when you're in the hospital, you got to have an advocate. To make sure the hospital and the nurses and the doctors are doing everything that can be done for your person you're advocating for, your relative. Usually, you got to be an advocate in your system. Don't assume the police. Police departments at best are multi-purpose agencies. They handle everything from traffic tickets to speedy tickets to serial murders. You can't do everything well. And it's imperative they bring in all the resources they can bring in to help. And we got introduced to a group called the Cold Case Foundation. It's like a Mayo Clinic in the medicine field. They've got 150 or so experts in their group that are volunteers. So probably some of them are retired, maybe all of them are, I don't know, but they've got a lot of experience in different aspects of, handwriting, forensics, psychology, just whatever needs to be pulled in on a case, they can pull it in. And that's a huge resource. So there are resources like that. You can't assume your local police department is good at everything. And
I think what he's saying is also pretty easy to believe about Pima County, right? You're like, okay, yeah. Doesn't seem like they're doing everything the best way they could. We don't know about the FBI, but in terms of the locals, yeah, I mean, he seems like he's got a point with that.
I think just be sure they're bringing in all the resources that can be brought in. Look at the Cold Case Foundation. Look at that.
Yeah.
And typically we were told by the cold case guys, they said, usually the police don't want to work with us because it's their case. They want the glory. And so we prefer to work behind the scenes with the police. They can have the glory. We don't care. But they said it's difficult to get the police to accept help. And it's crazy to not insist on that. It's like your family doctor. I mean, he can fix a lot of things. Broken finger, cold, but he can't do heart surgery.
Yeah.
This is heart surgery.
Well, you made a good point with the hospital, because even I had a family member in the hospital recently, and you kind of amazed when you're sitting there with them every day. Like, if you don't remind the nurses and the doctor, you're like, would they have even noticed this? Would they have even, you just assume that that's their job, but you really do have to be there kind of pushing everything along. Yeah. And I guess it's a similar thing when you have a investigation going.
I believe it is very similar. And if you need heart surgery, bring in a heart surgeon. Don't expect the local police department to have that skill. And normally they wouldn't. I mean, in medicine, if your doctor thinks, my gosh, you need heart surgery, he's going to say, hey, I'm going to take a whack at that. I need the glory. No, he'll bring in a heart surgeon and refer you immediately and get help. And that's a kind of a fundamental potential flaw in the way our system is organized. We have 250,000 unsolved homicides in this country. That's appalling.
Wow. That's a huge number, yeah.
And then Colorado has 1,100, over 1,000 unsolved homicides. That's crazy. That's the most serious, to me, that's one of the most serious crime that could be committed, to take someone else's life. And you leave it up to Barney Fife if it happened in Mayberry. The woman that was advocating for help in her sister's case, I think, in this little town in Ohio where the police the part-time chief of police wouldn't ask for help. She said, justice should not depend on your zip code. And that is a fact, yet it does in our country. The way we're organized that way because we evolved that way. Tombstone, Arizona was founded as a town 100 years ago, I guess. We need a lawman in here. Let's get Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp comes in. He's the law in Tombstone. And Wyatt Earp's not going to ask for help. He's the law.
Yeah.
We got 18,000 Wyatt Earps in this country.
So it's sort of built into the culture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a culture problem.
Yeah.
This Moscow, Idaho case where those students were murdered. First thing, look, how big is Moscow? 30,000 people. Oh boy, that's not good. They won't have a homicide detective or anything. And the chief of police got up there and said, we're going to manage this case. That's not good at all. But he managed it. He didn't try to solve it. He managed it. He brought in 40 FBI agents. He brought in the state police.
Yeah.
He managed the case. And they had an arrest in 3 weeks.
Yeah, they had the FBI in right away.
They used Occam Labs, which is one of the premier DNA labs in the country. And this is what we've been telling the Boulder police to use. You can't lose. State government does not have IgG technology yet. I'm not even sure the federal government does. It's so new, but it's so powerful. And there are private labs that have that technology and have done all this amazing cold case solution work, but they have to be asked and invited. Not that they'd be happy to help, but they have to be asked. It's crazy.
Well, I appreciate your time, Jon.
You're welcome, Brian.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking with you and appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you for the interest.
Really appreciate Jon for taking the time to talk with me, for opening up to me about everything he went through. I really appreciate you guys for checking out the show, for subscribing, for sticking with me through all of this as I continue to follow the Nancy Guthrie investigation. I'm still in New York City, as you can see. It's Crazy. It's like
You answered the question, New York City, but we already knew that.
never stops here. It's late at night and it's still going. But I'll keep you guys posted if there.
New York City. Shadow says, the city that never sleeps. And I'm not that far away from there. Every now and again, I catch Shadow flying up there towards Manhattan. But also, please remember to like the video while you're here. Likes are free, of course. Spank that like button if you're feeling a little bit frisky. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's see here. Tell a friend or 5 about the flock of black sheep here too. And as always, super chat, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships. Great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free hoodie snacks. And we also put some in the Hoodie Snack 500. That's our investment fund. And thank you very much for all of the support that we've been getting so far. Now here's the video we went over, or we did not go over the other day. We'll go over this. And then there's a Tony Brueski video to go over.
Viewing people around.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. Really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I really appreciate all the support. It's now
Nanny Goat. Your like button's not working? At a catastrophe.
been 107 days since Nancy Guthrie went missing. I'm in the airport right now, by the way, walking in my flight. On my way to my next story, which I'll keep you guys posted on. But this episode is going to focus on Nancy Guthrie and specifically what happened in the initial hours after she went missing. You know, there's been a lot of confusion. Those first couple of hours, remember, Sergeant Aaron Cross with Pima County had told me that the family did in fact believe that she walked off, but then he clarified and said that was not the case. What went down? When was it officially turned into a crime scene? How do you handle that as a police officer when family's there and family's showing up and you've got, you know, emotions running high, but you're trying to figure out what's going on? I want to dive into those first couple of hours, and I'm going to do that with my buddy, retired FBI agent Steve Moore.
The first thing I wanted to get is your reaction to there's this new video of Sheriff Nanos. Fox Digital got video of him leaving the sheriff's office, and they asked him about the Nancy Guthrie investigation. It's always kind of awkward when, you know, you approach someone like that. He obviously wasn't really expecting it, but he said we're getting closer. I'm curious what you took from that. If you just thought he was just sort of being optimistic, or if you think that may actually mean something.
I think he didn't feel like saying same old, different day. You know, we're just not.
So Brian Entin said, Sheriff Nanos said, they're getting closer. What's the evidence they're getting closer? We have no idea. They might have things they're not telling us about. I mean, it's almost certain they do have things they're not telling us about. The variable is, how important is it? What they know. That's what I would say. So retired FBI agent Steve Moore says, Sheriff Nanos probably just didn't feel like saying same old, so he said, getting closer. Shadow's a little skeptical of Sheriff Nanos's claim.
I think what that means is we're getting closer because we haven't given up. And, you know, technically every day you consider, I mean, if you can eliminate one person in Arizona that day or one person in the United States, technically you've gotten closer. But I would need something more than that for that to mean anything significant to me.
Yeah. And a few weeks ago, the New York Post, and I don't want to get like personal here, but I did notice his Corvette. A few weeks ago, the New York Post had pictures of him in the Corvette, and then he was, you know, was parked right in front of the sheriff's office. He left again in the Corvette in that video. I don't know. I mean, look, he can have a Corvette. I mean, the guy's been working his whole, you know, in law enforcement his whole life and whatever. But I don't know, like just with everything going on with Nancy Guthrie, for some people, it kind of rubs them the wrong way that I guess that he drives that car to work, or it just seems to be getting a lot of attention.
Yeah. It's one of these things where if you succeed in all your cases and you look like Sherlock Holmes, the Corvette becomes, ooh, isn't he cool? It's kind of like James Bond drove an Aston Martin DB, what was it, DB5, and nobody said anything about it because James Bond always succeeded. If James Bond didn't succeed, they'd say, "How do you get that car?" You know. So I think there's a little bit of self-inflicted wounds there when you are not succeeding in something. I wouldn't show up with bravado at work. I would show up like a blue collar worker trying to get out. I've got a couple cars, one of which I think is fancy, and one of them I think is not. It's an old pickup. I might drive the old pickup if the press was there.
Yeah, you make such a good point, because I've thought about that a lot, not just with the Corvette, but just in general. Whether it's fair or not fair, the fact that the case isn't solved, and it might not be Nanos's fault at all. I mean, we don't know. It could have been a whole different sheriff and they might be in the same spot, but like, it doesn't really matter, because no matter what, the fact that the case is not solved and there hasn't been any progress, people are not going to be happy. Like, it's almost like I think about it as a reporter, you know, if my boss says, go get this interview, and I can't get the interview and the person doesn't want to talk and it's impossible to get it, it still doesn't really matter. I didn't get it. Like, it still doesn't look good, you know, and it could be totally out of my control, but the optics don't change. And I think that's kind of maybe the situation here.
Yeah, and he's right about that, right? Since there's been no big developments, everything Sheriff Nanos and the team does is going to be looked at through a critical lens. That's just how it works. If there was good news and they solved all the cases and they were like Matt Murphy, undefeated, oh, okay, now people are going to look at you differently. But until that happens, people are going to look a little bit skeptically at what's going on.
And it's like in some ways, he doesn't realize that.
Yeah, he may not, and that's and you know, there's part of me, as you said before, that says, hey, this is my car. I've worked for it. I'm going to drive it in good times and in bad times. But here, you know, you do need to be aware. Like, if you had just screwed up something at work and you came into the meeting with the boss, you wouldn't be the one sitting there with a cup of coffee, you know, talking, say, hey, how are you? Hey,
Right.
you know, this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
You'd be the one sitting quietly at your desk, because there is something about the human psyche that says, when I am not doing well, I should back it down a little bit, you know, pump the brakes, be a little bit humble, and show that I'm trying. And he may not get that. And, you know, like you said, it may not have anything to do with him. It may not.
I just don't think Sheriff Nanos has good self-awareness about how his actions impact the case and how his actions are perceived, which is weird, right? Because many narcissistic people, they're all about image. But again, when you're seeing things through a distorted version of reality, then you're not seeing it correctly. He has an idea of what looks good, but then there's the reality of what looks good. And does it look good for him to be at some basketball game within a week of the disappearance? No. Now, realistically, are you going to be at work 24/7? No. But it just doesn't look good. It's not good optics.
But whether or not he's Sherlock Holmes, James Bond, or the sheriff of Pima County having a bad case, there comes a time when you say, I'm just going to be a little bit quieter, and I'm going to be a little bit more humble, and encourage you all to understand that I'm working very hard. And maybe that's what he's missing.
Hey guys, I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's episode, Incogni Identity Theft. It is such
Incogni. Everyone's talking about Incogni. Emily Baker, is that her name? She had an advertisement for Incogni too. So Shadow said, Jared, you should be reaching out to Incogni. And I said, you're probably right about that, Shadow.
a big issue. I am always so paranoid.
This effort that's been ongoing to, you know, basically boot him out of office. You know, there's a couple of different avenues where that, in ways that that's happening. There's a recall, but there's also the board of commissioners there that are coming up with different ways, and there's different ones that really want to push it forward. If in fact he was removed, what does that do for the investigation? And I don't know if you've worked on any cases in the past where like your supervisor or boss has been fired, or I mean, is it actually a bad thing at this point for when it comes to the Nancy Guthrie investigation, or would it be a good thing?
I've had those situations where somebody above me has been moved out, or is in Pima County terms rotated, and for cause, because a case wasn't going well, or headquarters felt like we didn't have things lined up the way they wanted it to be lined up. And it depends. If the person is the real cause of the problem, I mean, half the time you're saying, oh, great, now we can get to work. Now he's not going to bother us. He or she is not going to bother us. We're not going to have to go off on these little tangents when we know the direction we need to go. But some of the time it's, oh, no, not this one. They were really making this investigation work. And now we're going to have to kind of like really gather up whatever they were doing and try to take up for them.
Right. So yeah, even though on the outside though, some people want him gone, it may, I don't know, maybe it further complicates things. Maybe they already have a process in place. You know, I don't know.
It will complicate things. I mean, there is going to be, say he was removed from the case, and say he was the problem. I'm not alleging that necessarily, but say those were true. There's going to be, even in that situation, a confusion over, now who do I ask on this decision? You know, there are certain things you can't do without a manager's approval. And so you're thinking to yourself, who's the next in line? Who do I go to for that? They're not. And so instead of walking into the sheriff's office and say, remember that lead we had out in Marana or wherever it is, mind if I just go take on that lead? And instead of a decision right away, the person is going to have to say, I'm new. Sit down, tell me about the lead in Marana. So there is going to be, even in the best of situations, a learning curve that's going to stunt the growth of the investigation for a little while. But I would, if the sheriff had been removed and he was the problem, I would say that would be a very short time of stumbling and a vast improvement on accelerating the case going forward.
I talked to a sergeant from the Pima County Sheriff's Office in the last week. His name's Aaron Cross, and he was describing sort of how chaotic it was the first week right after Nancy went missing, that there was a communication breakdown within the department that also, you know, bled into communication with the FBI. But I wanted to, and he was describing to me how some of the detectives were telling him about the chaos right when they first got to the house. And that he was saying that some family members thought maybe she had walked off. Like there was all sorts of information coming in. The family was there. I wanted to ask you about that. Like when you first arrive on a scene, you know, there may have been a crime, there may not have been a crime, but family's there. Obviously, you know, emotions are high. It could be a crime scene, but it might not be a crime scene. How do you handle that? Because you know, obviously they're going to be wanting to search around the house, the family, and looking and emotional, but at the same time, I'd imagine you have to sort of preserve the scene too.
Yeah, you're not allowed to have confusion at a crime scene like that. And let me you know, unpack that, because obviously there's going to be all sorts of things going on and people will be confused. But law enforcement coming in, you are the ones who've done this all the time. You shouldn't be acting like this is your first time at a crime scene or first time somebody's been missing. And it certainly wasn't with these people. The uniformed officers see it every day. I'm wondering what the heck, what is their training? The FBI and well-run police departments and sheriff's departments, we have an absolute plan. It's like running a play. you do this, you do this, you do this. You start with them, you talk to that person, you separate those groups right there. You start interviewing them. Let's find out where, what we have, what information. I'm going over to this room. Don't let anybody bother me. All I want to hear is input from you guys. You know what I'm saying? You are the ones who come in and deal with the confusion. It's like, imagine if you cut yourself really badly, you're bleeding, and you make it into an emergency room, and the emergency room nurse goes, "Oh my gosh, you're bleeding." You know, that's not what happens. They say, "Sit down, calm down. With doctors here. You just sit there, let us do our job, and somebody get some compression on that. This kind of thing." An emergency room does it every day. They may move fast. They may be very concerned if a person comes in very bad condition, but one thing they're not is confused. And so that being confused is not a sign of this is a really big crime. So we're confused. That's a sign of inadequate preparation.
How do you deal with family members, though? And not specifically in this case, but just sort of generally, people are really emotional when you arrive on a scene when someone's missing, and realizing that your mom is gone, and they are probably telling you things like, "Oh, this may have happened," or that. And I don't know what happened at Nancy Guthrie's house. I'm just thinking, if it was me, maybe I'm looking in the different bed. You're kind of rushing around, I'm sure. Like, how do you deal with the family?
Well, first of all, you need to get them in a position, in an emotional position where they can provide lucid information. Get something. It's like why you always hear on 911.
And that's a skill in and of itself, right? Being able to talk to the family in a way where they feel safe and secure. I don't know who is doing that in this case, because every detective they had on it, no homicide experience, according to Brian Entin. So who was talking to Savannah? Who was talking to Annie and Tommaso? Who was talking to Cameron? Who was talking to Nancy's church friends? I don't think we know. But it would be very interesting to hear what those conversations sounded like. Just like it would be very interesting to hear that original 911 call too. That would also be fascinating.
Okay, take a breath, calm down, just tell me, this kind of thing. It's similar to that, except it's easier. If you
Hark, says Shadow. Shadow says, "What's that smell?" Ooh, bad smell. Oozer. Organic grass-fed soy-free hootie treats. Can you believe that, Shadow? Shadow says, "Thank you so much, user." I say thank you on Shadow's behalf. Straight to the Hootie Snack 500. And of course, soy-free hootie snacks as well. Organic grass-fed. That's luxury hootie snack, Shadow. You caught that, Autumn? Thank you again, user.
Unless it's just one of you. But if you can get 3 or 4 people in the room very quickly, as I was saying before, you get them, you get them away from the people who are running the case immediately. Get somebody who is very good with people to sit them down, get them some water, give them confidence. We've got this. This is what we do. We're here to help you. Now, please, quietly and as carefully as you can, and write down things if you need to, but I am here to listen to every word you say. And I'll be here for the next 10 minutes with you, not moving a muscle, hearing every word. And if you don't tell me calmly, it slows the investigation down, doesn't speed it up to talk fast. And so while you're doing that, the person who's going to be in charge of the investigation is in another side of the room, not in a conversation with frantic family. They're able to think about this, saying, "What do we have?" And they'll get information from investigators. We have blood on the porch. Okay, we've got a crime scene. Then have somebody set up a perimeter. Somebody get investigation or evidence response out here on on the way now. We need to start interviewing people around the neighborhood. You're in charge of that. You go do that. So as you can see, the fewer people you have, the more confusion there's going to be. The more people you have can be confusion if the person in charge doesn't have a plan for getting everything strategized. You can't, it's like you have to huddle before you run a play. And so it sounds to me like nobody took charge. If there's confusion, it means that nobody's in charge who knows what they're doing. Because if you have that person, they know how to compartmentalize everything. It's like building a brick wall. You get all these things done, and then it works. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like in Nancy's situation at her house, you know, you've got the driveway, you've got possible tire prints, you've got the blood, you've got all the possible evidence in the house. When you show up to a scene like that as a deputy or an agent, you're dealing with the family, you're dealing with the immediate emotion, like you just said. But do you need to be thinking about it being a crime scene too? Because at the same, if everybody's running around, you're kind of like hurting the evidence, aren't you?
Yes, you are, but you don't know where. You can't just say, okay, we can't talk in here.
Well, one thing's for sure, they shouldn't have trampled the front step. That video from 857 Tucson, that really exposed them, in my opinion. All of the detectives were trampling right where that blood was on the front step. Were they not? We saw that video. They were. Maureen said that's not the right way to go. Maureen said what you're supposed to do is to create a path around so you don't contaminate that part of the scene. There's blood there. Why are you trampling it? Like, that was absurd. I mean, and perhaps a law enforcement official can tell me why I'm wrong about that. But why am I wrong to think that detectives were there standing on it? And who's to say they weren't leaving DNA? Hairs falling off, whatever. Why would they be doing that? To me, that was absurd. They should have never done it that way.
I mean, ideally, you know, you're already there. The family's already there. So they've already contaminated the thing. So what you'd like to do is move everything away. But at night, in the middle of the night, it might not be a useful thing to do. Especially, I mean, you would think, well, maybe we can move to the driveway. But as soon as they say we've got blood on the front porch, well, then the outside's bad too. So you would try to constrain everything into, say, a living room or something like that. If there was obvious signs of a struggle there, you might have to go someplace else. But initially, you go to the kind of like the one place that is closest to being a neutral site, something that isn't going to screw up the investigation. I remember one time I responded to a shooting, and I was FBI, so I wasn't the first person there. It's going to be uniformed LAPD. And I screamed up, code 3, bailed out of the car. I saw a SWAT team going in. There was blood on the floor. Kids were running by, panicked. And I got to the
what do we have here? Shadow says, Sweet Caroline with the $10 super chat. Say Hootie Snacks from us all. Soy Hootie Snacks from us all. Thank you so much, Sweet Caroline. Shadow and I really appreciate your support. You're always so kind to us, as are the rest of the flock of black sheep. As for the rest of the lot, likes are free, of course. So is subscribing to the channel. But spank that like button if you're feeling a little bit frisky. And say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. And as always, the super chats, super stickers, and becoming a member or gifting memberships, great ways to support the channel because they help me pay for Shadow of the Night Owl's soy-free Hootie Snacks. Thank you again, Sweet Caroline.
Location, and there was a uniformed officer there with a clipboard saying name, agency, and contact phone number. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they understand how to run a crime scene. And it's kind of like, in a ship in battle, people still have to get to their positions and man their guns. They can't just huddle.
So even like regular first responding deputies should know that from the moment they get there, you would say?
That's part of their, people say, what do people do in the shooting in the police academy? Well, it's more than just shooting. You learn stuff like that. Crime scene management is one of the subjects you will be.
You know what probably happened is, like they said, they thought it was a walkaway, so they weren't thinking about it properly. They weren't thinking about a crime scene. They were thinking about a walkaway. I bet you that was part of the problem. But of course, you have to diagnose things properly. If you don't diagnose the situation properly, you're going to take the improper steps. So if they diagnose it as, oh, she wandered away, you're going to do the wrong things. But once you see that blood in the front step, I don't know how you see it as a walkaway anymore. So you have to diagnose it as, uh-oh, this looks pretty bad now. This looks like an abduction, maybe even worse. So we have to start treating it like that. And when you diagnose it that way, you have to keep that crime scene protocol in order, which it didn't seem like they did at all. And then they opened it up way too soon.
You will be tested on. It's not like, you see the crime scene and they pick up a casing with a pencil, lead and stuff. Stuff like that. First of all, don't do that. But things like that, don't touch the evidence. Things like that. That's what they teach at the police academy.
There's been some false alarms with finding human remains. People thought maybe they were Nancy's. There was like a femur that was found a couple of days ago. And from the local deputies we've talked to there, they said, look, if you start searching the desert here, some of the retired guys have told me this, like, you're going to find human remains. I mean, it's a vast desert. There's a lot of migrants that come through that area that don't make, it's like they're going to find, there's a lot of missing people. So it doesn't really surprise me that they've found some things. But I'm just wondering if they do find, and you hope that maybe she's still alive, but just talking realistically, if they do find Nancy's body somewhere, how big of a deal is that for the investigation? I mean, does that open up a whole new?
It's massive.
Yeah, explain that. I mean, like what even with time passing by.
If they found, I would really rather they found her alive.
Yeah.
But if they found her body, it would be another treasure trove of evidence. And maybe this time, the FBI and the sheriff's department could all be on the same page, set up a wide perimeter, because the body had to get there somehow. So there will be evidence on the ground, whether it's footprints, tire tracks. You hope they're
They could also get evidence from the pacemaker too. They can do that as well.
Detectable, but where the body is dumped, it will.
Oh, we got some double super chat action, Shadow. Can you believe this? We have Chatty Cathy with $9.99. So Shadow says thank you so much for that soy-free hoodie snack investment into the H&S 500. And then Sweet Caroline says she loves this channel. Well, Shadow and I love you all too. So thank you very much for that, Sweet Caroline and Chatty Cathy. Our H&S 500 and soy-free hoodie snack fund going through the roof. We have green candles today. Thank you both for your support. Shadow and I appreciate it. We wouldn't be here without y'all.
Just that will give you intel. Things that are on the body, even at whatever state of decay we've got there, you're still going to have useful evidence, and that would be just a treasure trove of information.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even the location alone, something as simple as that, right? Then you start looking for surveillance video. I mean, it gives you an idea of what direction the person was going in.
Right. Somebody's not going to drive 100 miles one direction to dump a body and then come back. It just, they just don't do that. And somebody will point out, on the internet, well, I know when they did that.
Yeah.
But generally they don't do that. And that will help you. And, things like if it's in a really remote area that's rugged, well, probably had a 4x4, things, there's all sorts of information that you can pick up. Was the body found in water?
That's what a lot of the psychics were saying, right? Probably found in water. That's the other thing that made that Sleuth's Intrigue. What the hell is the name of that channel? Sleuth's what? It's Monk's Intrigue, and then Sleuth what? But that one person called in and said that Nancy was in the lake, but she wasn't in the lake. But other psychics were saying she was close to water.
Everything leads to conclusions.
Can they still get DNA even if it's months and months later off of a body? If it's
Absolutely.
bone?
Absolutely, you can get DNA even if it's months and months later off the body. Great question by Brian Entin. Mayor, thank you so much for the super chat, Mayor. Thanks for always being kind. I'm sorry for being too pushy with my opinions initially. Glad this can be a safe place to share. Now, you didn't do anything wrong, Mayor. And this is a safe place to share. I try to make sure it is. And I think for the very most part, it is that way. Now, the people that aren't that way, they're no longer here. And that's how it's going to stay. But Mayor, I was curious about that case with Jon Benet because I don't know that much about it. So I was happy to hear your thoughts. I was happy to hear Tina's thoughts on it as well. But Shadow and I say thank you very much, Mayor. More soy-free Hootie snacks, free-ranging and organic. Right, user? So thank you again, Mayor. Shadow says thank you too.
And that kind of thing.
It's possible. I mean, obviously you can get it from you can identify the body, but if you have if unless it's like in a lake or something like that, there's going to be things. I mean, just a hair or maybe even skin cells. If you were picking up something heavy, you leave skin cells on it and they're not just going to blow away like that. So there's a good possibility. I wouldn't bet my life that we would get DNA, but it is certainly a good possibility.
We've talked a lot about there's this strand of hair that they found in Nancy's house that's being tested. I was talking to Maureen the other day, and she was saying, look, if all they found, if I was at a crime scene processing it and all I found was a hair, my boss would say, you guys got to go back in. There's got to be more. And there could be more. We just don't, I mean, we haven't heard. There's likely.
And that's what Jon Benet's father just said too, right? If you've only gotten 2 rootless hairs, I mean, that first 3 days should have been scouring the planet of that crime scene for clues. So to imagine that's all they got, and they might have had some other touch DNA from the home that turned into nothing. They had that glove down the street or down the road, a mile or 2 away, but that's it. Pretty poor. Pretty poor, I would say.
Is more but all we know about is this hair. Do you think that they found a lot more than the hair that we just don't know about?
It's very possible. And as you were telling me that story, I'm saying just a hair, go back, and so Maureen, I mean, obviously she's very correct in that. I think what you have to realize here, and a lot of people don't understand this, where they say, oh, they didn't find any fingerprints in the room. Sometimes that means that you didn't look hard enough. I mean, the evidence that convicts people is frequently invisible. You're not going to see a fingerprint from more than a foot away. Hairs, I mean, you look out here, I'm a guy, I don't see hair on my clothes, so you don't see what you're looking for. And the skill and the trick of being an evidence technician is knowing where to look. And, you're not going to spend your day an entire day trying to fingerprint the ceiling or getting DNA off the ceiling. But there are certain places where people tend to touch, and that's part of their training. Yeah, just as a not a gross example, but a macro example, doorknobs. You're going to go after every doorknob, everything that people have to touch with their hands, things like that. And so what Maureen was telling you very, very correctly is that just because only one hair was found, that doesn't mean more weren't there. And in fact, it indicates if one was there, there's probably 10 somewhere. You don't just, imagine the odds of a person coming into a crime scene, losing only one hair, and you find it. That's not likely. If you find one hair, there's probably 10 others that you've missed. Same with fingerprints and skin cells, things like that. As gross as it sounds, that, look around your room. If there's any dust, not in your room, but in mine, there would be. If there's any dust, remember that's a great deal of skin cells in there, things like that. There is evidence everywhere.
So hopefully they have way more than.
On a side note, it's always great to see the flock of black sheep supporting one another, where even when Nanny Goat offered a couch to Danielle from halfway across the world, that's pretty cool. Of all the cons of the social media and internet era, this is certainly not one of them. So I love to see that, and Shadow loves to see it too.
Just the hair, and the hair is just sort of what they're talking about, what we're hearing about now behind the scenes. Did you see, did you happen to see Kash Patel's comments when he was on with Sean Hannity talking about the case?
I didn't see it. I heard some transcripts from it or read some transcripts of it. But anytime, you're speaking ill of another agency or something like that, that's, a big deal.
Yeah, I'm curious what you thought about that. Basically, he said that they were kept out of the...
And have a great night, Lawrence. The rest of the flock of black sheep will wish you a great night as well. Oh, and back to the hair. Like he said, it is extremely rare for there just to have been, he left one piece of DNA and they found it. No. There's probably more, they just didn't find it. So get your butt back there and find it would be the answer, right? The problem is people were going back in the house, right? And so how do you know the DNA is not theirs? So again, this comes down to why the first 48 is so important. You blunder that first 48, you're going to make your life harder. And it sure seems like that's what's happened here.
Investigation for the first 4 days, that he had a plane on standby ready to take the DNA to Quantico, and that the sheriff, we've talked about this, the sheriff decided to use the private lab. And he was not happy with the sheriff. It was clear when Sean tried to push it a little farther to get him to actually insult the sheriff. He said, well, that's going to be up to the American people to decide. So he didn't go all the way, but he also sort of, he made it clear he doesn't think the sheriff has done a good job. At least that's what I took from it. Does that surprise you? Because it seems like typically you don't really see the FBI, saying that, especially like the director.
Yeah, it does surprise me, and it's generally it's counterproductive. I don't want to get political, but it's the FBI has the agents in the field have to deal every day with police departments, sheriff's departments around the country, and if they feel that the director will call them out publicly if they don't cooperate with the FBI, then they won't cooperate with the FBI. You cannot burn bridges, and in every movie you see, the stereotype is the agent coming in and saying, hey, I got it from here. Okay. And it, you see how easy I do it? We taught that in the
you got
academy.
A lot of practice. Yeah.
We'll take it from here. Thanks.
Yeah.
But no, so the FBI, the modern FBI at least, is very careful to not to offend the autonomy and the authority and the territory of the local police departments, because they are crucial to us and to our nation. So you don't want to have a bad relationship with them. And so generally the FBI director will never do anything like that. There are other ways that the FBI can send messages. There's a thing called the National Academy, and it is a highly prestigious law enforcement school for up and coming officers in police and sheriff's departments around the country and even around the world. And it is a big deal to get an invitation to come to that school. And if you are a newly elected sheriff, things like that, or, you know, they can't do it for everybody all the time. It's very limited and restricted. You might want to get that invitation to the FBI National Academy. And it's kind of like being in the Masons or something like that. With police officers will actually be behind their police executives will sometimes behind their names saying NA 84-5, National Academy 84 Class 5, just to let them know, you know, I'm in that club. And so if the sheriff did not get an invitation, and nobody in his department got an invitation to the National Academy, that would be the FBI's way of saying, we're unimpressed. And so there are other ways of doing this. And, just jumping back to what you said a little while ago, the director wasn't messing around about that whole plane thing. I think I've said before, for a brief while in the FBI, I flew helicopters and airplanes. And I remember one time we were at a plane crash, and the plane crash was actually caused by somebody in the cockpit with a gun, somebody who had gotten, it was a PSA flight where a disgruntled employee had shot the pilots and crashed the plane. I was running the helicopter between the crime scene and the airport. And at the airport was a twin engine airplane that took the evidence to a major airport. And then from the major airport, every day they would be flying back and forth in the jet. So, I mean, the FBI has some really amazing capabilities. And if he says a jet was waiting, a jet was waiting.
Yeah, I think I remember with the Charlie Kirk assassination, there was a jet that took the DNA pretty quickly. So I guess that's something that they can do.
Yeah, FBI has a little Air Force that they don't talk about a lot.
Interesting. Yeah. I was Googling to see I like planes, and I realized I'm probably not going to see pictures of the FBI planes. I don't think they don't have FBI written on the tail, I'm guessing.
I might have a picture too. I can show you.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But just lastly, with back to Kash Patel, I mean, what do you do you think he was trying to send a specific message by saying that? Is it disappointment in the sheriff, or is it?
It's a good question. So, chat, what do you think Kash Patel was trying to communicate when he was with, who the hell was that? Sean Hannity. So when he was talking about the case with Sean Hannity, how they were frozen out for 4 days, according to Kash Patel, what do you think his goal was in saying that? Open-ended question. And that's what Brian Entin's asking Steve here.
And I know you don't want to get political, and I don't really either, or is it trying to save face? Like, wow, this investigation really is in such a rough spot that they have nothing, that he's trying to place blame. Like, I guess I was trying to figure out his motivation, because he hasn't called out the sheriff that way publicly until now.
Yeah. And that would be a last resort. And again, I don't know Kash Patel. I just know the directors I worked under. And that's kind of the nuclear option, to go to criticize them publicly. So I would hope that where that came from, whether or not it was the right thing to do, I think he was trying to break a logjam. I think he was trying to say, we're not going to get anything done, and I'm not going to be silent anymore about it. And that could only come from the agents on the ground who are working directly with the sheriffs, sheriff's deputies and sheriff's investigators. And I'm not even saying that they're having trouble getting along with the sheriff's investigators. Generally, we tend to get along very well. Of course, it could have changed over the course of time, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the sheriff's investigators are saying, yeah, we really want to send that to Quantico, but we can't. And you say, can you tell me why? Nope, I can't tell you why stuff like that. Messages are given, and then you pick up a phone to Washington and say, I don't think this sheriff is going to deal with us. And so the FBI at that point has to make a decision. See, it's difficult because, listen, the FBI has the case because it's now a kidnapping, and that it's technically within their jurisdiction to take the investigation over. But at the same time, this is the department you're going to have to work with for the next 50, 100 years. You do not want to, put a smoking hole in the ground that everybody can point to. So I think the FBI is doing everything they can to work this with the help of the sheriff. And that may have been a shot over the bow saying, we can work this without your help.
We know that the local crime scene investigators processed the scene. It was opened back up, but then it was closed again. And it wasn't until day 5 that the FBI evidence unit showed up. Is that an issue? I mean, do you have faith that the local team was able to get what was needed, and when the FBI got there, was it too late in some ways?
Well, yeah, it would be too late in some ways. Coming late to a crime scene is like coming late to a buffet. Some things are going to be gone, and you need every.
That's a good analogy. Coming late to a crime scene is like coming late to a buffet. Some things are going to be gone. That's a good one.
Everything there, or other things don't make sense. It's like getting there and all you've got is iced tea and cake. Well, you've missed the meat. You've missed the really important part. So, what I don't know the capabilities of Pima County Sheriff as far as evidence processing and collection. Everybody's different. So when you come into the scene, I'd love to say, like my team's the best, the FBI is better than everybody. I'm not going to say that. When I went to an LAPD crime scene and it was going to be an FBI case, I had complete confidence that things were going to be done right. They are, large departments are absolutely pros at this. The issue with Pima County doing it is not in the talent or the skill of their people. It's the amount of their budget, the amount of evidence technicians, and the equipment they have been given. So the FBI can literally fly an evidence team in. We call them FBI offices in a can. We just fly them in a jet, and we can do an entire evidence collection. I think that's what happened there. So I would have loved for the FBI to have done it, because I think they had the skill, the training, and the equipment and the manpower to do it. Whereas Pima probably had less equipment, less manpower, while still maintaining the skills and desire.
Really appreciate Steve for taking the time to talk with me. Really appreciate you guys for following along. Again, it's crazy that it's been 107 days. I'll keep you guys posted with any developments. I'm on the move, going to do other stories and stuff. I was just focusing all on Nancy Guthrie at one point, but there's other things that I also want to cover. But of course, I'll stay on top of everything happening with Nancy's case. I'm still making calls every single day. I'm sure I'll go back to Arizona at some point soon. So anyway, appreciate you guys for following along, and I'll talk to you guys later.
So User worked with Russell Brand too? That's crazy. Russell, he's certainly a character, to put it mildly. By the way, make sure you like the video out there, because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel, of course. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships. Great ways to support the channel. That all helps me pay for Shadow the Night Owl here's soy-free hoodie snacks. We also put some left over in the Hoodie Snack 500. And say hello to the flock of black sheep here. Black Sheep Nation, as we call them. And thank you very much for all of the support that we've been getting so far. Now, this will probably be the last video of the night here. If I could find it, of course. Tony Brueski has so many videos, they're hard to find. There they are. Oh, and by the way, I don't think I mentioned this yet. 2 announcements. Dr. Salerno, Friday. I mentioned that already. But Tony DeWitt from JD A Lawyer Knows. I've gotten in touch with him, and he agreed to come on. So we'll talk about some cases. And it just depends on what cases do you want me to talk about with him. Corey Richards would be one. Murdaugh would be another. The doctor from Hawaii. What the hell was his name? Conan? I forget his name. But maybe him. What cases would you like to see us talk about that he would know about?
Yeah.
This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Brueski and Robin Drake.
The public has largely consumed the Nancy Guthrie case as a who took her mystery, but another possibility hangs over the investigation. What if the public-facing narrative itself is misleading? The ransom notes may be noise. The camera tampering may have been partially performative. The offender behavior may not align with the motive people assume. And sometimes in cases like this, the most dangerous thing investigators face is not a lack of evidence. It's evidence pointing in conflicting directions at once. We were just talking about Kash Patel. We were talking about Nanos. We were talking about almost the statements that Kash has made publicly on Hannity's podcast about if they had been brought in a little bit sooner. To me, it almost, like I said, puts other departments on notice to a certain extent of, hey, if you got something that you can't handle, you better call us so we can get in there. I guess the question I have on some of that going forward with other departments is, does speaking out like that?
Jen's been wearing this outfit a bunch of times now, so it's getting confusing. Because you would think this outfit would be only a once-in-a-while outfit, but apparently she's worn it multiple times now.
Does that encourage other departments to call the FBI for assistance, or does that make them go, maybe we better off just handling this in-house without the extra noise and the extra chaos coming in, although be it well-intentioned with, the actual investigators on the ground. Sometimes,
Hey there, Dana. And just to remind you, members only live stream tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Wanted to make sure the members know. We can go over Q&A, Chill&A, other videos. It all depends, whatever we want to do. So reminder, Shadow and I will be there, 8 p.m. Eastern. Be there or be square.
It does feel like you got chaos here and you got chaos there. And if you're already, let's say there's a department that is operating in a very fruitful way, I don't know that this is, if you're the person making a decision going, hey, let me call that guy. He seems like he'll be here to help. I don't know. Does that encourage or discourage, you think, other departments, should they be facing something of similar nature?
Well, it better encourage them.
Yeah.
Because what lessons from Delphi, what lessons from this case, even from Idaho in actually a pretty positive way.
Yeah.
Right? The lesson learned there was, listen, you had 60 agents on that and staties on it. You had everyone involved in that case. And in 5 weeks, they nabbed this guy that would have never been, he was unusual, right? He shouldn't have been on the radar. PhD student, unrelated to the victims, lived in another state, blah, blah. But they put it all together, and they put it all together quick, but they were involved on day one. And same with the state police. Moscow didn't say, oh, I think our crime scene people can handle it. I understand Moscow is smaller than Pima County, and I'm not trying to put down Pima County.
And by the way, folks, I'm not sure if you heard what I said before, but when I speak to Tony DeWitt, what cases would you like me to go over with him? We could definitely go over Corey Richens, maybe the Murdaugh case as well, because he's getting the retrial or whatever you want to call it, because that woman in the office there really blundered. But what other cases? Because that's what he wants to talk about. It's not going to be like an interview. He wants to talk about the cases. So I will oblige him with that. I heard that, user. I heard that. And I heard he was on Piers Morgan and he was trying to find a Bible verse, but couldn't quite find it.
County. I'm
Yeah.
just, if you can have it all, why aren't you having it all?
Yeah.
The president was literally on television on his Air Force One talking about the Nancy.
Danielle, I'll ask him about that. But since it's not in court yet, I don't know if that's in his wheelhouse. I'll ask him now. I'm not sure. I'll go through his channel. I mean, has he talked about that case yet? Generally, what I see him doing is really just about the cases, like once they're in court and once there's been charges filed. So we'll see. I'm not sure what he does with the evidence phase. And that's what the Brian Hooker case is in, right? If you can even consider it the Brian Hooker case, right? They're in evidence, collecting evidence to make a charge and file phase. That's where they are now.
Guthrie case and how they have the full breadth of resources from the FBI. If I'm a sheriff, I'm like, perfect, because I'm going to look really good when this is solved. It does.
Tony DeWitt is the guy with the beach background that we go over sometimes. JD, a lawyer, knows. His name is Tony DeWitt. If you look at his channel, you'll see the cases that he goes over. He goes over Corey Richens. He went over that Dr. Koenig case. Murdaugh, he goes over.
Doesn't matter that the FBI solved.
Maybe Nick Reiner. Maybe Michael McKee. I got to look at the records.
It.
No.
Or you aided in solving it. That is the piece. I still say any missteps or misjudgments from us looking in by Sheriff Nanos are strictly because of ego, not because of incompetence. I don't even think he's incompetent.
Mhm.
I just, his ego got too big.
Yeah, I mean the two can play hand in hand, and one can destroy the other. The ego can destroy the competence, or severely stain it. Another element to this that has been discussed is because we're all keep looking at this damn thing, and we're like, what's going on here? There's something just doesn't make sense, and you have to at some point. Now that we're 5 minutes in, go, am I looking at this wrong? Are the blocks that I have in place in my head from my understanding of this case, is there something that's not what it appears to be? And now the discussion is kind of going to, well, are there elements of this that are staged? Is there a staged narrative? And I'm in no way going down conspiracy routes here by any means. I'm talking about whoever the perpetrator is, did they take steps to essentially lead investigators down another path? What are your thoughts on that? Is there any elements here? Is there anything you're saying that I'm not or others are not that leads you down that road in any way, shape, or form where objects here in the rear view mirror may be closer than they appear?
Well, I want to preface this by saying what I mean by staged. Do I think Nancy was killed someplace else? No. Do I think Nancy was, somehow brought back to the scene so her pacemaker could connect with the phone and, thus make it look like she was abducted? I really don't. Do I think the doors were kept open to show perhaps multiple people that would have entered or something like that? I do think that's possible. Mm-hmm. So I think certain things could have been partially staged. I know that there is a lot of talk out there about could she not have even been abducted? that the whole thing is just a big menagerie.
Huh? What is this one? What walk me down that road.
Oh, this is an interesting one. It's interesting because it comes from somebody who is well respected.
Okay.
And the thought process is this, is that Nancy was killed someplace else. Nancy, this whole abduction thing is a bunch of baloney. Porch guy is baloney. In other words, that's why he's, it's all just a play. And that they, killed her someplace else. Obviously, they would have had to bring her back or otherwise have her blood droplets to drop on the porch. So maybe not bring her back, blood droplets on the porch. Basically, that the whole thing is staged.
For what? Why? How?
For murder. That they murdered her separately. That was the motive. The motive was murdered. And then to cover up the murder, they staged this abduction to get everybody down the road of this being an abduction when it's not.
So the benefit of staging it, if it was staged, I don't necessarily think it was, but if it was staged and maybe the real crime scene is maybe Annie and Tommaso's house, all right, well, maybe there's more evidence there they should be collecting, right? But also, they did do that. Like, they did check out Annie and Tommaso's house, right? They did take all those pictures, and the SWAT team was there, and the forensics people were there. What did they get? We don't know. But either way, staged or not, they've gotten away with it up until this point. That's the bottom line. So it's like, okay, they staged it, not staged it. Either way, I don't even think they needed to stage it. Even if it wasn't staged, they've gotten away with it anyway. At least up until now.
It's a cover for a murder.
Is this down the road of, because I haven't gone down a lot of roads that get kind of weedy. Is this one of those where it points at family members or something like that? Is that, or because I'm trying to understand, and I'm in no way am I blaming a family member. I do not believe that whatsoever. But I'm wondering, okay, they dropped her off that night. I mean, there's the garage door, all that stuff. I mean, there's evidence that she was home. She connected to the app and everything. Is it something in that vein where they never dropped her off or something? Is that where that goes?
I think it's certainly in the vein that it's somebody very close to the family that would have been involved. But I'm just saying that's certainly out there when you're looking at what is in the ether. It's in the ether, and it's an interesting thought. I just,
but how would that play out if without a family member being involved? I mean, if she was dropped off, she was out, they were playing cards. I mean, where would they have abducted her from that night? Or am I off on that too? If this were to play out, where it wouldn't involve a family member?
I think the only way for that scenario to play out is for a family member to be involved.
Okay, so that's one of the theories that are out there. Okay.
So Jen will concede that part. The only way that happens is if a family member is involved. Interesting. Yes, and Rooster is the headlining act, one of the headlining acts at the Chuckle Hut. That's Shadow and I's comedy club.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about this, Tony, and I will say this. It is so incongruent. This guy on the porch with his holster in his crotch, big gloves, lumbering around. That's the problem with this case, is it does not comport with any other kidnapping that you would.
It doesn't.
See, that's
no. It doesn't. And I mean, I'm just thinking about that for a second, because this is the first time I've really absorbed that one. So like my wheels are turning on it. You would have to essentially, I don't even know how this plays out. Like, what is she accidentally dies? Again, if she accidentally dies, why would you be doing this? So let's for a second say somebody killed her. And then we got to blame it on somebody else because we don't want to take the blame. So then what? You suddenly have all of the gear to make it look like you're gonna kidnap her? Quick, let's get on our kidnapping outfit and show up on the porch so it looks like this. I mean, again, it's just like step by like, yeah, that's why I've never gone down the road, because you do, and it's like, no, it just doesn't add up. Again, you've been down this far deeper than I have.
Mhm.
What other crazy ones are out there right now? And I'm not trying to give light to them, but I'm curious as to where people's minds are going on this.
I mean, I would say that is probably the biggest one. And this is what has people wondering.
Yeah.
They believe that because nothing has been released.
Mhm.
But again, the public isn't entitled to all this information.
No.
They believe that because there's no footage, if you will, they don't have anything showing that she was dropped off. They have the garage door that goes up, this 2-minute time frame that's been disclosed where she goes in. And it's, in my view, it's totally reasonable. I mean, I can't make any sense of why people don't believe. For instance, people are upset because there's an Uber driver that took her to Tommaso's and Annie's house that night.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that makes total sense. If I'm the one, like, we're all family, and I said, listen, I'm in the middle of making, ravioli and Caesar salad and blah, blah, blah. I've got a child at home. Listen, Mom, Uber over, it's $5.
Yeah.
And I bet you anything, Nancy insists on it when she goes over there.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thought. So people want to extrapolate. Okay, the Uber thing is weird.
Hey there, Christy. And by the way, I think we did watch some of this video already. I think what happens is Tony Brueski repurposes some of the videos, so there's overlap in some of them. Like there's bits and pieces, and then there's overlap. I think there is overlap on this one. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat.
I personally don't find that weird at all. At all.
I don't either. I don't either. And I think it's a matter of if you use Uber or not.
And then he takes her home, Tony. He by himself takes her home. So if you're the mastermind behind this whole thing, you're going to be the one that becomes the last person to purportedly see her.
Yeah, I mean, none of it adds up, and again, I mean, and they've checked the family. It just doesn't. But I get people are trying to fill in blanks. I mean, there's responsible ways of doing it, and there's irresponsible ways of doing it. It just there's just some roads that just don't add up to make a whole lot of sense any way you push it. And
you know what? Occam's razor.
Yeah.
The guy comes, he does surveillance. He apparently did surveillance on the 11th and on the 31st. He's ready to do the hit. He's not comfortable with firearms, but he wants to have a firearm there. Not because he can't get an 84-year-old to comply, but I think because he's in there doing his best impersonation of Rambo. He gets all gillied up in really what is more of a costume than what you normally see somebody in. And he doesn't even Rambo in there. He's not going in there like most home predators, invaders. No, he's comfortable. He knows he's going to get caught. I think he has somebody else because there's that two-way radio sticking out the antenna. And then watch him as he looks off to the left, freeze frame that. I've got like 6 freeze frames where he's like, to me, there's somebody over there. And then they walk around the house.
I think there's more than one person, but at the same time, I don't know if that's what gives it away. Wouldn't you also just be making sure no cars are coming down the road? Couldn't that also explain looking like that? Right? You want to make sure no lights are coming around the corner to catch you?
Possibly go in through 2 separate doors. They leave those doors open. They go snatch her. They don't bother to close them. And they whisk her off through the front door, which is pre-planned. The other guy is in the car. They gag her, put a hood over her face, carry her out. She's dripping blood because her skin is like crepe paper because she's on, you know, all the different medication, the blood thinners. They throw her in the trunk. And when they get to their destination, they're like, oh my gosh, she died.
Surprise.
Yeah. I mean, that is the Occam's razor notion. And
Is it though? Is that the Occam's razor notion that she just died by accident? Is it? Is it, chat? Is that the most obvious explanation, that she died by accident? I don't know about that. I think it was a hit, honestly. I think it was a hit that was done intentionally. So I don't think what she is saying is really the Occam's razor choice. But what do you think? What do you think? Do you think that's what it was? She just died by accident? I mean, press 1 if you think that. Or press 2 if, like me, you think, no, the entire goal was a hit. So 1, died by accident. 2, it was a hit.
Yeah.
now they're pissed. There's no way to get any money. And they put out those 2 notes, not to family. They don't go there with a ransom note. If you want money, you go there with a ransom note and you leave it for likely Annie and Tommaso to find.
Yeah.
When she, you know, it's not law enforcement. Family is going to go there first. They're not going to immediately think, oh, mom didn't show up at church, her church meeting. I guess that means she's dead.
Yeah. Is there anything, and we'll wrap on this, if you were running this investigation, Jennifer, right now, what, based on what we know, what would you be doing? Where would you be taking this? Is there anything that they have right now that you would say, put this out into the public? This can only help. This can't hurt. What direction would you be going here with this?
I am so glad you asked that. First of all, number one, and I've said this before, all those flipping billboards would have porch guy's face on it. I think they're around 25 or something like that.
Right. We've heard her say that. I remember her saying that. Time for some Emily show. I think Emily's sharp.
A probable cause hearing. Well, they were back in court.
We're skipping the D4VD.
May 12th, and the preliminary hearing that was supposed to happen May 12th, they've got you covered. Today's show. There are a couple of things going on in the Nancy Guthrie case and surrounding the Nancy Guthrie case. First, we've talked a couple of times.
So this is the Emily show. Many of you already know her, but she has 2 channels, by the way. There's the Emily D. Baker channel and the Emily Show channel. That had confused me for a minute, but that's what she does. She's a former prosecutor. And Shadow and I really like her. I think she's sharp. So make sure you support her work.
About the investigation into the sheriff of Pima County, Sheriff Nanos, and the Pima County Board of Supervisors had a lot of questions and wasn't really sure what their options were with regard to Sheriff Nanos. And what they were saying were indications that he was not exactly truthful in his past job applications into Pima County, and concerns that during depositions, he had not been truthful. Well, we now know that the council decided not to upend the election on that, but rather forwarded this to the state's attorney general for further investigation. The thing I would never want to hear if I am Nancy Guthrie's family is that the sheriff in charge of this investigation, whose office is in charge of this investigation, is going to be distracted by something like an investigation into the sheriff and potential perjury. I am taking a look at reporting from AZ Central. This is from May 14th. The Pima County supervisors voted to refer Sheriff Chris Nanos to the state attorney general for possible perjury and urged him to repair trust after months of controversy.
I remember Brian Entin had someone on the channel that said they were advised by their lawyers to not vote to bring him down. So there was reasoning behind it, but there's other things they're still going to try to do. But also, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Tell a friend or 20 about the flock of black sheep here, Black Sheep Nation. Say hello to the flock of black sheep. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They all help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free hoodie snacks. Members only live stream is tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's a Q&A and chill-and-A. That's what becoming a member gives you access to. I might start doing more. We'll see. So that the higher tiers get more. We'll see how that goes. But thank you very much for all of the support that I've been getting so far. Shadow appreciates it too.
The article says, though the supervisors referred Nanos' action to the Attorney General for review, they did not take a position on whether Nanos committed a crime. It's not really their place to do so. They say that the sheriff is under scrutiny over issues unrelated to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, who's been missing since February 1st. Nanos, they summarize, is under fire for misrepresenting his work history in a sworn deposition, on his public resume, in media interviews, and in a report to the county leaders. They say that the vote was a blow to the embattled sheriff, but a bipartisan pair of county supervisors had wanted to go even further. Before the meeting, Democratic Supervisor Matt Hines and Republican Supervisor Steve Christie had floated a plan to force Nanos out of his job. After receiving advice from their lawyers, the supervisors steered clear of vacating the sheriff's office. They might not actually have the authority to upend an election. They go on to say that Supervisor Rex Scott said that the majority of the board agreed that the supervisors do not have the authority to remove Nanos from office. Right, Emily, keep reading. Quote, he met his obligation under the statute, but I think it's important that we make the referral to the
See, that's the guy Brian Entin was talking to, the guy at the bottom there.
Attorney General's office, and we did. And what is most important is that the sheriff take immediate action to repair the extraordinary climate of distrust and lack of faith in his leadership. I absolutely agree with the statements of Representative Scott there, because there is a tremendous climate of distrust, and I can't imagine how that feels within Pima County. They go on to say that Nanos has remained defiant despite scrutiny from the county board, a vote of no confidence from his own deputies, and a long-shot Republican-led recall effort to knock him out of office before he is up for re-election in 2028. And then they quote Nanos's attorney, James Cool, in an email to them saying, quote, the sheriff is grateful for this opportunity to report to the board on his department's many successes. The sheriff heard the words of the supervisors tonight, and he looks forward to continuing his work to promote trust and public confidence in the sheriff's department. Is that by giving statements to people.com instead of just having a press conference? Is it the continued piecemeal discussions that just kind of halvesies what's going on, or no? Is that not part of it? They go on to say that the sheriff had hoped to put questions about his past to rest when he provided a report to the board in April, but it sparked even more controversy. They say that members of the Board of Supervisor Hines and Christie said that they do not believe the report was sworn because Nanos did not sign a copy given to the board on April 21st. The document was written and signed by the sheriff's lawyer. The sheriff signed the report on May 1st, and the lawyer sent it to the board. For both of those supervisors, they say it was too little too late. The supervisors had initially given Nanos 10 business days to comply with their request, and if the sheriff did not comply, they would use a little-used law that would give them a path to remove him from office. Hines...
this is really cool by Sweet Caroline here. What do we have here, Shadow? Sweet Caroline has gifted 5 The Wizard of Radical Self-Respect memberships. So whoever the YouTube Lords of Random decide will get these will be able to attend the members-only live stream tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully, Sweet Caroline, you are able to attend such things. 8 p.m. Eastern, my time, is way different than your time in Australia, I know. But hopefully you can attend. I would like to make it so that you would be able to attend as much as you support the channel. So thank you very much, Sweet Caroline. This is going to get us some soy-free hoodie snacks, free range, soy-free, and some hoodie snack 500 too, some investment into that. So thank you very much, Sweet Caroline.
Said before the meeting, the idea that they were confused about the nature of the homework assignment is absolute bullshit. The media bleeped out the last few words there. I just filled them back in. Quote, I've talked to more than a dozen attorneys and 2 judges who all believe that he should be removed. And while Nanos continues to be embattled over what he has or has not said and whether or not it was perjury, there are more reports coming out about whether or not he has cooperated with the FBI. And that discourse around whether or not Pima County sheriffs cooperated with the FBI, there was reporting that came out on May 12th that Nanos actually scolded another public official for cooperating with a request from the FBI. Emily, you just want to say FBI as much as possible. Maybe.
Remember that? We went over that. And so that's when that person, whether a county clerk or something, Shadow, refresh my memory. Who was that person? But there was a woman that was going to give information to the FBI, and she did. And then Sheriff Nanos scolded her. There was a phone conversation of this, and it was pretty shocking because that woman did nothing wrong. But that just goes to show you the ego that was operating in Sheriff Nanos. He wasn't doing what was best for the case. He was doing what was best for his ego and his need to be in control and his vindictiveness, etc. So that was pretty telling. We went over that a few days ago.
The FBI! This is also coming to us from AZ Central, updated on May 12th, 2026. Pima County official says Sheriff Nanos scolded her for giving info to the FBI. A Pima County official said Sheriff Chris Nanos scolded her for providing information to the FBI because it created new leads for his department to pursue in its search for Nancy Guthrie. That's distressing. So he got mad because it was going to give them new leads. Imagine that. That's the atmosphere that he's cultivated, where if you give them more work and do good work for the case, he's going to get mad. How absurd is that? I mean, Shadow can hardly even think straight thinking about that. Like, that's a terrible atmosphere. He should really resign. That's ultimately what should happen. The people of Pima County should demand he resigns and say, get the hell out of here. How can we have a sheriff like you who's going to get mad when the people that work for you want to do their jobs? Like, that's out of control. He's worried about leads, or that the perception is that he's worried about more leads. Pima County Assessor Suzanne Droby said Nanos seemed stressed and frustrated when she told him that her office had complied with requests for information from the FBI. The tone of the call was unusual, Droby said, because she typically had pleasant and cordial interactions with Nanos. Quote, we're sensitive to the fact that the sheriff is under a lot of stress with all this, but yes, there was a little bit of a negative interaction. The statement goes on to say, quote, it was inferred that we were creating a lot of additional work for the sheriff's department due to us providing this information to the FBI and then them having the responsibility to follow up on all of those leads that were provided. It felt like there was an insinuation that I had done something wrong by cooperating with the FBI. At that particular moment, I felt like I was put in a position where I felt like I almost should apologize, where I know definitely that was not something that I should be doing. And then they go on to talk about part of the rift or perceived rift between Nanos and the FBI, saying this case has also exposed a rift between Nanos and the FBI. The county has jurisdiction over the investigation, meaning the FBI cannot take over the case unless Nanos gives the Bureau the go-ahead. FBI Director Kash Patel recently went on a podcast to criticize the way Nanos kept the FBI at arm's length during the search for Guthrie, something the sheriff denies. Nanos did not respond to requests for comment. They go on to say that though Nanos assured Droby that he was working, quote, very closely with the FBI, the county assessor's experience seemed to back up Patel's claim that there was friction between the sheriff and the federal bureau. In a telephone interview, Droby said that her office fulfilled a request for information from the FBI to aid in its Guthrie investigation. When she called the sheriff as a courtesy to let him know that she had provided the information, Nanos was, quote, definitely frustrated. Droby said that the type of information she provided should remain private to protect the investigation, and the FBI did not respond to request for comment. The quote from the assessor goes on to say, it seemed like he was very stressed, very frustrated. I wouldn't categorize it as yelling per se, as much as kind of scolding and expressing frustration with all of the leads he was receiving, their obligation to follow up on them, and that my office was was actually being more harm than good by providing more leads that they just had to follow up with. They go on to say Droby said she was unsure about the number of leads her data had created because her office's IT team made up the report and gave it directly to the FBI. Quote, in his mind, it was a lot of additional work that was being created because we handed this information over, Droby said of Nanos. The sheriff's department had signaled in February that it was overwhelmed by tips, according to public statements issued at the time.
Now, the only excuse I could ever give Nanos is if there are leads that go to nowhere. But again, how do you know if they go to nowhere? Right? It's just a bad press. It's a bad image. It's a bad tone to be setting that, okay, someone does their job and you're going to be mad and you're going to make it seem like that person's going to feel like they should be apologizing. Just not a good energy. It's not a good climate to be cultivating in the Pima County's office there.
They continue saying that the Department Communications Center was receiving hundreds of calls related to the case each day, and the Sheriff's Department spokesperson said in a February 20th email that she asked that, quote, only actionable tips be reported to investigators.
What was that? Shadow says, happy birthday to Linda. May 21st is her birthday. So on the East Coast here, it is now Linda's birthday. So Flock of Black Sheep wish Linda a happy birthday. Shadow wishes Linda a happy birthday as well. The kangaroos in Australia and koala bears of Australia and the marsupials of Australia, they all wish Linda a happy birthday.
And that comments or opinions on the investigation not be relayed to the 911 or non-emergency lines. And I covered that when it came out at the time. My wondering was if the internet was trying to internet detective and that was overwhelming and potentially swamping helpful leads. They say that the dynamic may have contributed to the tense phone call, which was primarily between Droby and Nanos. The assessor continues as they report, quote, I didn't appreciate it. I thought I was being extremely helpful. So to have that type of confrontational discussion for doing something that I felt was right was very disappointing. And what's more interesting is how this call ended. Droby said the call ended when another member of the sheriff's department stepped in and told Nanos to back off and leave the county assessor alone.
How about that? Fascinating. Fascinating. This is what's going on there.
According to Droby, the official said Nanos shouldn't give her a hard time for complying with an FBI request. The sheriff agreed, Droby said, and he thanked her and told her to have a nice day. Droby said that the conversation was an isolated incident. Quote, up to that point, I've never had a negative interaction with the sheriff at all. I am kind of chalking it up to a lot of frustration with an immense pressure that he has been put under, being thrust into the national spotlight due to this investigation. However, that being said, it was a very uncomfortable, unpleasant conversation. Droby said it's rare for her office to receive a request for information from the FBI and that she will always comply with a law enforcement request. Our job is to be transparent and help whenever, it's requested for us from many agencies. In this particular case, obviously being the Pima County Assessor, that was hitting very close to home. I was happy to be able to provide whatever we could provide from the data in our office to help with the investigation. And it notes that this was originally published on May 12th and then updated later in the day on May 12th. But my concerns are, if you are seeing the behavior from the sheriff indicating that this type of stress or pressure or everything going on is causing a lack of judgment, which I think going off on the assessor for providing information to the FBI shows a lack of judgment in that conversation, I have concerns. And we have seen continued spotty conversations, but also I appreciate that it's brought up that he's being thrust into the national spotlight. But I can't forget that this is the sheriff's department that agreed to take part in a reality TV show called Desert Law. It seems that being in the national spotlight was something that Nanos at one time thought was a good thing for him and his department before Nancy Guthrie went missing. So the national spotlight, I don't think, is the excuse here. Also, when you're the elected sheriff, it is your job to provide the steadfast, calm, considered leadership. And if that's getting overridden by stress, frustration, and anger, it causes me pause for what is happening within the department and how decisions are being made. And part of the reason I wanted to cover the background on what was going on with the Board of Supervisors and what was going on with the assessor is because I think it might give context to a group of new statements from the sheriff to different media outlets, including that the sheriff is not in contact with the Guthrie family at all, which I also find concerning. Leonard, a quick thank you to today's sponsor, Honeylove. You've heard me raving about everything Honeylove, but when I say they've rolled out some show, this reporting is coming to us from KLOD. Is it cold? Is it cloud? News 13, KOLD, from May 11th, 2026, saying Pima County Sheriff Nanos gives update on Nancy Guthrie investigation. Again, I have been and remain critical of the piecemeal updates on this case instead of just putting out a statement when there is information to put out, because it becomes jumbled and difficult to follow. They begin saying on February 1st, Nancy Guthrie was reported missing from her home in the Catalina foothills. The disappearance of the 84-year-old Guthrie, mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, set off a media firestorm that has been going strong for 100 days now. In the days following her disappearance, they say the roads surrounding her home were packed. 100 days later, and it's silent, with the memorial being the only reminder of what happened. I guess the only physical reminder. But Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos said in an interview with 13 News that their work continues. Quote, "They are working hard to get this resolved, and I think every day they get closer," Nanos said. Based on what? They say the sheriff was not just referring to his detectives working the investigation, but also to the agents at the FBI. Nanos says, day one, the FBI was involved in this case. The FBI! And they continued to be involved in this case every single day. Nanos said they're also receiving help from the Arizona DPS and a handful of labs across the country. Quote, "We continue to work with our labs, whether it's on the digital end or the biological end, DNA." If the quotes sound a little funny, I am reading them exactly as written. It is part of Nanos's.
Reminder to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Shadow appreciates all the super chats, super stickers, and people who became a member and gifted channel memberships. When you're a member, you have access to the members-only live streams. The rest of the support helps us pay for soy-free hoodie snacks for Shadow. He's a hungry, hungry owl, let me tell you, and he gets very hangry when he's not had his proper dosage of hoodie snacks. And make sure you say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here too. Black Sheep Nation, as they like to call themselves as well. Plenty of Pisces fish too. I think if there's probably one astrological sign that most people are, or the most amount of people are, probably Pisces, if I had to guess. And again, thank you very much for all of the support I've been getting so far.
Cadence that in all of the interviews and all of the things that we have covered, sometimes the sentence structure, I'm like, wait, where did the rest of the sentence go? What is that? It just is at this point. When it comes to DNA, Nanos said the labs are having to separate all of the different DNA that was found inside the Guthrie house and then work to identify who it belongs to. And that takes time. Quote, "It moves at a snail's pace, I guess for some," Nanos said. "But for my investigative team and for me, we look at this as, no, this is doing exactly what we need it to do." Do I know what that means? No, I don't know what that means.
Nobody knows what it means, but it's provocative. It gets the people going.
Do I know what he means by having to separate all the different DNA that was found in the house? No, because it's an odd way to phrase that. If you're talking about mixed DNA, then why not call it mixed DNA or mixed samples of DNA? But if there is different DNA at the house, there's nothing to be separated. It's just to be tested. So the languaging is hard for me because it's not very specific. This case, Nanos said, quote, "And whoever that individual is, that individual will have a right to a fair and impartial trial." He said they'll also be able to take the DNA found, use it to figure out information about the individual, and then hopefully connect that to the countless digital pieces of evidence they've collected and cataloged, which sounds to me like IgG or genetic genealogy DNA, which is what they did in the Koberger case. It goes on to say, and that's why Nanos said he absolutely does not see this case as cold. Quote, there's way too much work to be done. That is ongoing with some of the physical evidence we have, Nanos said, and we're not going to give up on it because it's been 100 days. They say the 13 News reporter Renee Romo asked Nanos if there was information that they are withholding from the public. And his response was, yes, absolutely there are, but it's not done because we got a keep it secret, he said. That's a direct quote. It's not done because we've got a keep it secret. I don't know if that was mistyped and it's keep it a secret. I can't tell you. I'm reading it as it's written. It's done because we got to protect our case. I mean, yeah, a lot of parts of investigations stay secret. The article goes on to say, and while the PCSD and FBI have been receiving tens of thousands of tips, both agencies urge you to call if you saw, heard, or remember anything. We need you to call us, Nanos said. We know somebody out there knows what happened. And then they give the contact information. If you have any information in this case, including 1-800-CALL-FBI, the total reward for information that helps find Nancy Guthrie or those involved in her disappearance is now more than $1.2 million. It does not surprise me that there is information in this investigation that the public does not know. The information that we as the public have gotten has been piecemealed. It has been spotty and inconsistent. And it seems that when large amounts or impactful information has come out, it is because the public's help was needed. So I'm not surprised that there is not more information. I'm again frustrated that the communication method seems to be answering the phone and talking sometimes. And to continue on that, Sheriff Nanos also spoke to people. This is from May 13th. The headline says, Sheriff recalls moment Nancy Guthrie case took a criminal turn. Quote, doesn't look right. The Arizona sheriff leading the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance recounted to people the moments early in the case when he realized the 84-year-old's disappearance was likely criminal in nature. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos spoke to people as a search for Savannah Guthrie's mom, Nancy Guthrie, crossed its 100th day following her disappearance from her residence in Tucson, Arizona. And this is new information that I have not heard yet, but it also seems to conflict with what we've heard Savannah Guthrie say about this case. Because it seemed in Savannah Guthrie's sit-down interview, she was saying that they were imploring the sheriff to understand that their mother was not capable of just walking away, that they thought maybe she had been taken to hospitals, but she wasn't just going to walk out of her house and go missing. And so this, for me, conflicts a bit with that and conflicts with the early reporting in this case. The reporting from people continues saying Nanos recalled being alerted about a missing person case around 2 p.m. over text on February 1st, a few minutes after the chief notified him about an 84-year-old woman missing from her home. Nanos said he got another text that the scene of disappearance, quote, doesn't look right. Something is wrong. We're calling homicide. And that purports to be a direct quote from Nanos relaying a text.
And yes, Sikorsky and us all talked about that situation in the members only live stream last week. And we were telling her it didn't sound too good. So now we found out for sure it definitely wasn't good. So I'm glad that the truth is out. Once the truth is out, you can make the best decision for you. And it sounds like Sikorsky's doing that. So I'm sorry that's how it turned out, Sikorsky, but I'm glad you know what the truth is. So we got your back, Sikorsky.
He received. The quote goes on to say, the reason that homicide was called is because they are the investigative unit in charge of missing person. Search and rescue is their operational team that helps assist with these issues, Nanos says. So you're telling me that on day one, the search and rescue team, the disappearance team, said we need to call in the homicide investigators? And then what happened? The article goes on to say that Nancy's disappearance led to a massive multi-agency search and has so far generated several leads, such as doorbell camera footage showing an armed suspect and a glove found near Nancy's home. That glove is not a lead.
That glove is trapped. Yes, exactly right. Emily took the words right out of my mouth, as Meatloaf would say.
I understand why they're including it. The gloves found so far away were not a lead. And then gloves, we know that the testing on the gloves that were closer to Nancy's home were actually traced back to a restaurant worker whose gloves they were. So, nope. I mean, I guess they were leads until they weren't. And they report that Nanos says the investigation continues and they are increasingly getting closer to answers. Again, I hate to be so critical, but how do you know you're getting closer to answers? You might be getting closer to answers that are also a no, but I guess those are answers too. Those answers just might not lead to the type of answers that this seems to insinuate. Quote, every day our DNA labs are working with our investigators and they're coming up with different ideas and different thoughts of how to help them make this DNA work for us. You just test it. And then you see if you can establish a profile. And then you decide if you need to do IgG and start doing some genetic profiling. But I don't know what he means by they're just coming up with all these ideas on how to make DNA work for us. The quote from Nanos goes on to say, how can we do more with what we have? And so that's why I say it is, I think we're getting closer. I think that's platitudes. Because what we see with a lot of investigations is sometimes you're just trying to get the information you have. You don't know if you're closer until all the dots connect. And that's not all of the information from people and their conversation with Sheriff Nanos. On May 14th, they reported this. Sheriff leading Nancy Guthrie investigation says focus is on digital evidence as they shift through thousands and thousands of videos. So we've now moved from the DNA to the digital evidence. I think
Published May 14th. Interesting. We missed this one. Exclusive. I guess this is Crime Magazine by Danielle Bacher. We should write that down. Sheriff leading Nancy Guthrie investigation says focuses on digital evidence as they sift through thousands and thousands of videos. Exclusive. So, not DNA, apparently. Apparently, they screwed that up. But I did always say as well, if you can find the vehicle they escaped in somehow, that would really be helpful. It would give you something. So good luck to them sifting through the thousands of video clips, but it's also disappointing they have no DNA, or at least any DNA that they are holding any hope with. It doesn't seem like they have any hope.
digital evidence is a good place to focus because the DNA takes as long as it takes to extract, build a profile. And then if they're doing IgG, that might not hit for years to come. Authorities investigating the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie in Arizona are turning to a growing web of digital clues in the case. This includes, quote, thousands and thousands of videos, according to Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, who tells people that investigators are focusing on analyzing digital evidence, DNA, and tips in hope of identifying a suspect. Right now, I think our focus is on the tips, the leads, and the evidence we have in front of us. Digitally, the camera footages, as well as biological, the DNA, and those types of things. They say more than 100 days after Guthrie vanished, authorities have not publicly identified a suspect or announced an arrest, but Nanos says investigators remain convinced that the case can still be solved. Quote, my team, I've said all along, they're going to solve this, he says. I fully 100% believe that. At the center of the investigation is now an enormous catalog of surveillance footage gathered from intersections, neighborhoods, businesses, and home security systems across the area. They quote Nanos as saying there's...
So they're looking at the time frame, right? They're looking at the time frame 2:28 a.m. through 4 a.m., 5 a.m., around that area, right? But in particular, probably 2:28 to like 3:30-ish. That's prime time. Locally, you can make that to 3 a.m., if even not before that. So that time frame, if they can figure out the times to the videos, that would really help. And hey, how are you going to know if she's in there? I don't know. How are you going to know if it's the person on the front porch cam with their mask off? I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Thousands and thousands of video out there from intersections and ring cameras that we have to catalog. Maybe it's all of the white trucks over here, all of the red sedans over here. You've got to have it so when you do find a suspect, quote, hey, the suspect is John Doe. We got him. Now we go and say, well, what else do we know about John Doe? I don't have a tremendous amount of confidence in this statement, unfortunately, because it doesn't seem like he's really telling us how they're breaking down this investigation, because I would think they would target vehicles within a window of time where they might have been coming from the Guthrie home first.
Emily's my girl. I'll tell you, she thinks just like me. And Shadow says we approve of Emily. She's on the money.
And then seeing if there's any recurrences of those videos in subsequent footage, but you would need to target vehicles leaving the area of Guthrie's home during the window of time where you know she was taken, and then work from there versus sorting them by color. But maybe there's things left out of this statement. Emily, keep reading. The process, he says, is methodical. Build the digital map first, then work backwards once investigators have someone in which to compare. Quote, oh, he drives a white truck. Were there any white trucks in the area at that time? Nanos continues, oh, John Doe has this cell phone number. You back up those pieces of evidence that you gathered early on to try to make your case. Yeah, but also it seems like you could narrow down the cell phone pings around that time and then expand out to see if there are any connections to those cell phone pings. I mean, that takes a ton of time. We saw that in the Adelson case, but you can take the tower dumps and then see if any of those numbers are in that area either all the time and then possibly exclude them, or if there are numbers connected to Nancy Guthrie or family, which is what happened in the Adelson case, and start to sort that way. And maybe they are. And it would also seem that narrowing down vehicles in the area, because I imagine at this point they know all the neighbors' vehicles, and then you can categorize those kind of out and then look at other vehicles leaving the area in the targeted time and then work from there on those vehicles. And then at least you might have some vehicles of interest that were leaving the area, because the DNA analysis is just going to take time, especially if they're moving to IgG. The article goes on to say, at the same time, investigators continue to wait on advances in DNA analysis that could prove critical to the case. Quote, I know we have DNA that is unknown who the contributor or depositor is, but I think they're getting closer to finding out who that was, Nanos tells People, adding that he has confidence in our labs. Nanos goes on to say, when the labs tell us, hey, there's nothing else we can do, well, then maybe we've got a problem. We've got a cold case. But right now, the labs aren't telling us that. According to the sheriff, multiple laboratories across the country, including federal and state partners, are collaborating behind the scenes as technology continues to evolve. He's quoted as saying, when you have the best minds in the country working on problems, I think they're going to solve them. It just takes a while. Nanos says that investigators are moving carefully, even amid mounting public pressure for answers. Quote, nobody wants to make a false arrest. Nobody wants to falsely accuse somebody, he emphasizes. At some point in time, someday, we may have somebody in a courtroom that deserves his or her right to a fair trial. The way you get that is through a fair and impartial investigation. I agree with that part. You do need a fair and impartial investigation. I also think that if the update is that there are no updates, that's okay too. I understand that that becomes hard and unsatisfactory, but sometimes that might need to be what it is. Nanos says detectives are focused on evidence, not deadlines. Quote, there's frustration because people want to know. But this is just like any other case. Sometimes you solve them within hours or days. Sometimes it takes a long time, which is one of the things he has been consistent on. And he's consistently said that since the beginning of the case. Sometimes these cases take years, he said early on in the case. And that's interjection from me. Nanos goes on to talk a bit about the reports of tension between his department and the FBI. He says coordination between his office and the FBI began soon after learning of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Quote, Director Patel has his rights to his opinions, he says, adding that he believed some remarks were factually inaccurate. Quote, the FBI was working with us day one, Nanos said. We always had a working relationship. He disputes claims that investigators mishandled the scene or delayed search efforts in the critical early hours after Guthrie vanished. Quote, the plane was started immediately, Nanos says, referring to aerial search operations. Quote, they found blood, search and rescue, looked at the scene and realized it seemed suspicious. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. For Nanos, much of the public criticism overlooks the realities of how complex criminal investigations unfold, especially when detectives are intentionally withholding information to protect the integrity of the case. The sheriff doesn't do the investigation. His team does, he says. There are several people dedicated to this team. They are the talent. Criticizing those who are actually out there, touching it, smelling it, handling it, doing the work.
The problem for Nanos is he's just a terrible spokesman. He doesn't speak right. He speaks out of turn. He contradicts people like Brian Entin and Ashley Banfield. He's just not doing them any favors. So he's not a good mouthpiece for what's going on. That's what Shadow says too.
That's just absolutely shameful. Those young men and women are working hard every day. That's a direct quote from Sheriff Nanos. The article goes on to say that as the family continues to wait for answers, Nanos says he understands the frustration surrounding the case. While he is no longer directly communicating with the Guthrie family and says those conversations are being handled by the FBI, he maintains that investigators remain focused on solving it. And that indicates a bigger problem to me. Let's see what the rest of the article says, and we'll talk about that for a moment. They're quoting Nanos as saying, quote, "The public is frustrated, even the Guthrie family," he says. "Every passing second must feel like 100 days because they don't know. What matters is moving forward carefully so we don't make mistakes or falsely accuse someone or make a bad arrest."
I gotta say, for JLR to be doing that at after midnight, doing a reenactment, that is a little out of control at that time of day. And I'm not surprised one bit. I mean, if you did a reenactment in the middle of the street at 2 a.m., you're going to get the cops called on you anywhere, let alone Nancy Guthrie's house, let alone a well-to-do neighborhood like that one. So what do they expect at that point? I think it just kind of seemed like a publicity stunt kind of thing.
Nanos says that we still get calls, we still get tips, even if the tip is from last night, 102 days later, because it might be somebody calling saying somebody in the neighborhood doesn't look right. We'll tell our folks here in Pima County, if you see something suspicious to you, call us. The indication that communications with the Guthrie family are not happening by the agency leading the investigation does cause me a bit of concern. What has happened that the communications with the Guthrie family are not helpful, fortuitous, or have been cut off entirely, and they have rather worked with the FBI, who is not leading the investigation? It makes me concerned about what else is going on behind the scenes or under the surface of this investigation. And when we see the questions from the Board of Supervisors, questions from other government officials saying that Nanos was scolding them for assisting the FBI, and then some inconsistent statements about even the earliest days of this investigation, it causes me pause. And I worry that that upset within a department is also going to be a distraction from working a case that is getting deep into the weeds, and has to be, because if we weren't deep into the weeds, then we would have had some more answers. And unfortunately, I think that the DNA is probably going to be their best bet at this point, but you never know when there's going to be a change in a case. You never know when they will get that one piece of information that will make everything else click into place. And I hope that we do. I hope that the Guthrie family gets answers. I know that there are so many families of those missing that don't get those answers. And it is horrific for families waiting for those answers that might never come. It's frustrating to see how scattered it has played out. My criticism of the inconsistent communication stands. Even if the communication was the investigation is ongoing, period, fine. But a lot of the statements from the sheriff are, I think this, maybe this, it's not definitive. And it doesn't help anyone determine what's going on in this investigation or feel more confident. We're like, maybe we're sorting the red trucks from the white cars. If there's no comment, if there's no update, if the update is DNA processing remains ongoing, we are still following leads, fine. It does not feel thoughtful and considered. These feel like more off-the-cuff conversations. And with an ongoing investigation, that just becomes a little bit harder for everyone and to help the public feel confident in how the investigation is going. So I will keep you up to date. What updates do we take away from all of that? Well, a large update that Sheriff Nanos, and it seems Pima County Sheriff, is not in any communication with Nancy Guthrie's family. And that is very, very unusual. that the sheriff continues to fire back at the FBI director saying that they weren't brought in on this case in the earliest days, and him saying that they were. Then again, he's also been forwarded to the AG's office for perjury investigations. So I don't even know what to make of that until we see more about it. But it seems that there are at least enough questions with regard to whether the sheriff was untruthful in his hiring and in his representation of his past work that it gives me a significant amount of pause. And I'm sure that the Pima County Board of Supervisors have that same pause, and that's why they've been pursuing routes to see what can be done here. I hope that it is not distracting within the department, but I don't know how it could be any other way when your work is in the crosshairs. And what else did we learn from that? Well, we learned that initial investigators said we probably need the homicide team in here to start helping with this investigation. This is going to go beyond a missing person, which is an interesting new note. And we know that there is DNA and digital forensics still ongoing across multiple labs. So where will this lead us in another 100 days? Unfortunately, I don't know. But I think the way that information is coming out is just maybe leading to more speculation and not as much help. So maybe in the future, we will see DNA is still being processed and some more grounded statements. We are still compiling digital evidence. We are still going through thousands of hours of video, but I am going to keep seeing where this goes because at this point, I'm invested. I want to know what's happening with the investigations into the sheriff. And now I have so many questions that I have unanswered that it's created an open loop for me too. And for a lot of you as well. So we will keep an eye on when we have updates of substance, and the substance in these, again, being that, yes, they called in homicide investigators. It sounds like early on in this investigation, and that the victim's family is not talking to the Pima County sheriffs. Those are significant updates and give us a peek that there is still disruption within this investigation. Remember, it wasn't until the end of the Koberger case that we heard that detectives were in touch with the victims' families daily, even if the updates were small.
I think Savannah is in touch with some of them. It might not be Sheriff Nanos directly. It might be some of the detectives that are on the ground more than Sheriff Nanos. We've seen her walk off set of today's show, maybe to talk to them. That's all speculation, by the way, but that wouldn't surprise me. And she's probably also in touch with the senator from Arizona too. That's probably also happening because she's connected to him. We know that because she called him the day that Nancy went missing.
Even if it was just to check in and say that things were still progressing, but that they were in touch with the victims' families daily. And that's not what's happening here. And it causes me some concern. But you know what doesn't cause me grave concerns? Being here with the Law Nerds. It's always good to see you. And thank you again for all of your love on our latest Law Nerd Shop I'm With the Band launch. There are just a few things left from that launch while I'm recording this. And if you don't want to miss out.
She is very ambitious, this Emily. I should try to pick her brain sometime.
In the future, make sure that you have the Law Nerd app so that I can keep you in the loop before things go live, because
Shadow and I were thinking about going to law school as well at some point. Because I've always used to think I wanted to be a clinical psychologist or an LCSW, LPC, licensed professional counselor. I just wouldn't necessarily be thrilled with the standards and the restrictions. I like being able to speak freely. And I wonder sometimes what my ultimate purpose is with this channel. If there should be more politics involved at a point, or dating stuff at a point, or continuing true crime, toxic relationships. What is it? Shadow and I seek the guidance. I think we're where we're supposed to be now. We'll see. I've had this sneaking suspicion that because I lack like an official background of being a cop, a lawyer, or a clinical psychologist, it kind of gets in the way. It gets in the way of, because look at Matt Johnson, for example, True Crime Matt Johnson's channel. He just came on, but he's already blown up. Why is he already blown up? Because he's connected. He's connected to Court TV and others, and the YouTube algorithm likes it if you're connected. That's why Brian Entin, Ashley Banfield, Nancy Grace, all of them have a leg up because the algorithm favors people that people already know. Or they favor people that, now granted, they're all celebrities on TV too. That also helps. But they also like it when people have credentials, whether you're a clinical psychologist or a former FBI agent or a lawyer, fill in the blank. So Shadow and I have been thinking about that. Yeah, I think she'd be a great interview. I would love to interview Emily. I think we'd get along. We would get along swimmingly, I think. I'm going to try to do it, Nanny. Rooster. Nah, she's got, even Nancy can have a tough exterior, but although she's got a tougher exterior than Emily. But she's a softie on the inside, I bet. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, who is Alex, actually? I don't know if I even know who that is. Is that Monk's Intrigue or is that someone else? If not a psychopath user, right? If not a psychopath. So like I said, we got Tony DeWitt, Dr. Salerno. I'm going to try to get Dr. Simon in for a regular guest spot like I do with Dr. Salerno. I was getting into trouble. Some of the borderline folks on Instagram were not very happy with some of the clips I was posting from that interview. And I thought Dr. Simon was very courteous and respectful and nuanced, but it didn't matter. They didn't like him. Okay. I did appreciate 857 Tucson's coverage of that first day. That's how I know that the crime scene was trampled because of his video. So that was good. That is not how that crime scene should have been handled. I'm not even an expert. I know that. Shadow knows that. Maureen O'Connell taught us that. They should have been walking around instead of knocking on the door, walking over blood to knock on the door. It's like, get a grip. That was ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I think also, I've only started talking about true crime not that long ago. Before it was all dating and mental health, toxic relationship stuff, which I still do, of course, from time to time. But we're still truly trying to find our lane. And we're never above getting a mentor either. The best people always remain coachable. So I've been thinking about investing in some of that too. Of course, Autumn. I absolutely agree with that. I hear you, D. I don't know. They're probably really hurting. Dr. Salerno is harsh about borderlines. He has been accused of that before, for sure. But it depends, because I don't agree with Dr. Salerno on everything, but many things I do agree with him on. She ran so far away, Rooster, just like the flock of seagulls. Can't say I'm surprised, user. Can't say I'm surprised. And congratulations to everyone who got the memberships here. That's pretty cool. Thank you to Sweet Caroline for that. One of our 2 Australian representatives, Nanny Goat and Sweet Caroline, representing the continent of Australia. Yeah, so where is our OC girl? She ran away from me as well. Saddened by the loss of OC girl. We must find her in the IR chat, I guess. Actually, I don't even know if she's been there. 503. Whenever I see the words 503, I think of 503c, nonprofit organization. But all right, folks, it's about time to wrap this up here. So make sure you've liked the video. Make sure you are subscribed. Tell a friend or 10 about the flock of black sheep. As always, thank you very much for all of these super chats and super stickers and people who became a member or gifted memberships. Shadow and I really appreciate that, and we always do. Soy-free Hootie Snacks for Shadow, incoming. Investments into the Hootie Snack 500, incoming. Yeah, you should, Rooster. It's like a father coming in there to rescue his daughter from some sort of hooligans. Those hooligans over there, she needs to be rescued, whether she knows it or not. You got it, Teresa. D, as far as I can tell, I haven't seen any toxicity from you. And here's the thing, there are certainly borderlines where there is some toxicity. The thing is, not all borderlines are the same. There's different types and different levels of severity. Whatever you have, I couldn't even tell you have anything, to be honest. So, and again, people get misdiagnosed all the time too, by the way. That is also a thing. Oh, that makes sense, D. And maybe go for a second opinion too at a point. You're very welcome, Nanny. Jackie, you have a great night too, Jackie. She's good night, everyone. Sleep well. Until next time, Jared, you're the best all. Thank you so much, Jackie. Shadow says good night too. Shadow says you are all awesome, helping him get his soy-free Hootie Snacks. Have a great night, Rooster. Rooster, the headlining act at the Chuckle Hut. Autumn, you have a great night. Danielle's already gone, I guess. User, you have a great night as well. Danielle's there. Miss Kim and Laura, thank you for modding. Who else was in here? IP. D, have a great night, D. Autumn Elizabeth. Julie Bug's already been gone. All right. But that's it for the night. Chatty Cathy, you were here too. Sweet Caroline, have a great night. Tina, you have a great night as well. Same to you, Wendy. Have a great night. Mayor, if you're still here, have a great night. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the support, Sweet Caroline and User and Nanny and Mayor. And have a great night, Christy. Always good to see you here. So until next time, don't do anything we wouldn't do. Have a good night.